Introduction. Solomon's Secret Code. The Death of the Ego and the Birth of the King. The echo of the ancient world does not arrive as a whisper, but as a structural vibration that shatters the fragile glass of the modern psyche. You are standing at the threshold of a transmission that has been buried beneath layers of historical dust and deliberate obfuscation, waiting for a frequency high enough to unlock its seal. To understand the secret code of Solomon is to first accept the absolute. To understand the secret code of Solomon is to first accept the absolute devastation of everything you believe yourself to be. This is not a journey of self-improvement or a collection of psychological aphorisms designed to make your cage more comfortable. This is an architectural dismantling of the false sovereign. The world you inhabit is a masterfully constructed script, a hall of mirrors today. The world you inhabit is a masterfully constructed script, a hall of mirrors where every reflection is a distorted ghost of your true potential. And at the center of this maze sits the ego, the pretender to the throne. Before the king can be born, the beggar who thinks he is a ruler must perish. The death of the ego is not a metaphorical poetic event. It is a cold, calculated, and necessary execution. It is a cold, calculated, and necessary execution of the identity that was programmed into you by a system that requires your submission to function. Solomon, the master of the temple and the commander of the unseen, did not build his legacy on the strength of his personality, but on the total mastery of the forces that govern reality beyond the veil of matter. He understood that the human ego is a parasite. He understood that the human ego is the ultimate parasite, a glitch in the divine hardware that consumes light and produces only fear, pride, and separation. To access the code is to bypass the biological and social algorithms that have kept you in a state of perpetual hunger and reactive existence. We must look into the void of the unwritten past to see the temple Solomon built for the soul. We must look into the void of the unwritten past to see that the temple Solomon built was never just a structure of stone and cedar, but a blueprint for the human vessel once it has been purged of the parasitic self. The ego is the architect of the prison, using the bricks of memory and the mortar of trauma to build walls that keep the infinite out. You have spent your entire life in defense. You have spent your entire life defending a fortress that does not exist, protecting an identity that was given to you by a world that does not know your name. The Code of Solomon demands the immediate cessation of this defense. You must allow the walls to crumble. You must witness the death of the one who is afraid, the one who seeks validation, and the one who believes that their worth is low. The birth of the king is the emergence of the observer, who no longer reacts to the simulation, but dictates its flow. A king does not ask for permission to exist. A king is the authority through which existence manifests. However, this authority is inaccessible as long as the ego sits on the throne, playing with the trinkets of desire and the illusions of control. The code is a series of alignments. The code is a series of internal alignments that shift the center of gravity from the peripheral self to the solar core of the spirit. It is the realization that you are not the wave, but the ocean that allows the wave to take form. When Solomon spoke to the winds and commanded the spirits, he was not using magic. He was operating from the 0 point of the king, where the will is undistorted. The transition from servant to sovereign requires the complete incineration of the emotional gravity that binds you to the collective narrative. Every social expectation, every ancestral debt, and every perceived limitation is a chain forged by the ego to keep the king in exile. You must recognize that your current personality is merely a set of survival strategies masquerading as a soul no. This realization is the first spark of the protocol. It is the moment you stop asking why the world is unfair and start asking who exactly is the one suffering. The phantom self lives in the past and the future, feasting on regret and anxiety, while the king exists only in the high-voltage clarity of the absolute now. To unlock the Solomon protocol is to activate the internal geometry today. To unlock the Solomon Protocol is to activate the internal geometry that connects your individual consciousness to the universal mainframe. This is not about gaining knowledge, but about removing the interference. The temple is your body, and the code is the precise sequence of thoughts and non-actions that clear the altar for the return of the true master. You are being invited to stop now. You are being invited to stop participating in the consensual hallucination of the masses, and to assume the responsibility of your own creation. Consider the weight of the silence that follows the collapse of a lifetime of lies. When you stop feeding the parasite of the self, you begin to hear the low-frequency hum of the original blueprint. The system you were born into is designed for anxiety. The system you were born into is designed to keep you in a state of high-frequency anxiety, a buzzing hive of thoughts that prevent the deep resonance of the king from being felt. The ego thrives in the noise. It loves the drama of its own suffering and the pride of its own small victories. But the king is found in the stillness that follows the slaughter of these petty distractions in your mind. The secret code is written in the language of the Absolute, a dialect that the ego cannot translate because it lacks the necessary depth. To be born as the king is to step out of the timeline of the masses and into the eternal present of the sovereign. This transition is violent to the mind, but liberating to the soul. You are being asked to trade the known misery of your current identity today. Most will turn back at the gate because the price is too high. They would rather be a well-fed slave than a naked king in the wilderness. But for the anomaly, for the one who has seen through the flickering lights of the simulation, there is no other path. The death of the ego is the only door that leads to the throne room. The true initiate understands that power is not something to be acquired. The true initiate understands that power is not something to be acquired, but something to be uncovered through the systematic rejection of false dependencies. The ego seeks power over others to hide its own powerlessness, but the king possesses power over himself, which renders the external world secondary. This protocol is an invitation to witness the mechanics of your own enslavement here. You will begin to see that every trigger and every reaction is a diagnostic tool, revealing where the ego is still hiding in the shadows of your consciousness. The king does not fight the shadows. He simply brings the light of observation, and the shadows cease to be. The wisdom of Solomon was the ability to distinguish between the temporary and the eternal, between the noise and the stars. By aligning with this protocol, you are choosing to exit the cycle of victimhood and enter the realm of direct causation. The script is being rewritten in real time by the very act of your refusal to play your assigned role. Beyond the mental constructs lies the physiological transmutation. The Solomon Protocol is etched into the very marrow of your being, requiring a recalibration of senses. Most exist in a state of sensory narcolepsy, lulled by the repetitive frequencies of the artificial grid. To kill the ego is to wake up from the hypnotic trance of doing and to enter the majestic state of being that dictates reality. The king understands that every word uttered is a decree, a linguistic sigil that shapes the energetic environment. When the pretender speaks, it is to complain. When the pretender speaks, it is to complain, to beg, or to boast all forms of energy leakage that reinforce the bars of the cage. When the king speaks, or chooses the pregnant power of silence, he is stabilizing the field. This ancient code involves the mastery of the internal dialogue, the silencing of the prosecutor within, who keeps you small through the illusion of sin and inadequacy. There is no sin in the eyes of the king, only misalignment. There is no failure, only data. By stripping away the judgmental eyes of the ego, you gain the clarity of the eagle, seeing the interconnectedness of all events and the hidden paths to dominion. As the old self dissolves, the elements of the code begin to integrate into the nervous system. You no longer see the world as obstacles. You no longer see the world as a series of obstacles, but as a fluid field of potential that responds to your internal state. The ego believes that the world is happening to it, a victim of circumstance and fate. The king knows that the world is happening from him, a projection of his own internal alignment. Solomon's secret was the ability to maintain the center, to be the unmoving point. Solomon's secret was the ability to maintain the center, to be the unmoving point around which the universe revolves. This is not arrogance. It is the natural law of the spirit. When the ego dies, the false filters of judgment and expectation are removed, leaving only the raw, unadulterated power of the present moment. This is where the birth of the king occurs, in the gap between breaths. It occurs in the gap between breaths, in the space between thoughts, where the original authority resides. You are being recoded to function as a source, not a reflection. The world will try to pull you back into the script, using the hooks of guilt, shame, and social obligation. It will try to remind you of who you used to be, to keep you from becoming who you are. But a king is unmoved. A king is not moved by the opinions of the ghosts he has left behind. The death of the ego is a permanent severance from the gravity of the mundane. This sovereign state is the ultimate threat to the architects of the artificial narrative. They rely on the predictability of the ego, on your desires, your fears, and your desperate need for belonging. A king belongs to nothing but the source. A king belongs to nothing but the source, and therefore he cannot be predicted or controlled. He is the wild card in the deck, the anomaly that the system cannot compute. The Solomon Protocol is the process of becoming that variable, the one who breaks the statistical certainty of the matrix. It is the realization that the crown is not something you earn through merit or effort today. It is something you reclaim through the sheer audacity of your own awareness. To sit on the throne is to stop seeking the light and to realize that you are the radiator of it. The king does not look for signs. He creates them. He does not wait for the right time. He declares that the time is now. This is the heavy, golden reality of the sovereign. A life lived without the crutches of belief. The birth of the king is the reclamation of the crown that was stolen before you were born. This crown is not made of gold, but of the frequency of absolute certainty. It is the end of the search. The ego is a perpetual seeker, always looking for the next fix, the next lesson, the next relationship to fill the void. The king is a finder. He has arrived at the center of his own being now. He has arrived at the center of his own being and found that he is the void itself, and therefore he is everything. Solomon's wealth was not a collection of objects, but a reflection of this internal wholeness. He did not need the world to provide for him, because he was the source of the world's provision. This is the secret that the architects of the simulation do not want you to find. If you realize that you are the king, their power over you vanishes instantly. They can only rule over egos. They can only manipulate those who are afraid to lose what they think they own. But a king owns nothing, because he is the essence of all things. He cannot be threatened, because he has already died to the false self. He cannot be bought, because he is the value itself. This is the end. This is the death of the ego, and the birth of the king, the ultimate, rebellion against the script of the matrix, and the final return to the throne of the eternal origin. Every word you have processed here is a key to that throne. The beggar has died. The king has risen. The protocol is complete within your frequency. Step into your authority and command the world of form as the sovereign. Chapter 1. The architecture of the ghost thrones. The foundation of your perceived reality is a cemetery of dead ideas, a collection of ancestral echoes that have been mistaken for your own voice. To begin the work of decoding the secret code of Solomon, you must first confront the terrifying realization that the I you refer to when you speak is a ghost sitting on a throne of shadows. This first chapter is a surgical dissection of the identity. This first chapter is a surgical dissection of the identity structures that have been grafted onto your consciousness since the moment of your first breath. You were born into a pre-existing architecture, a grid of definitions, expectations, and moralities that were designed to house a servant, not a king. The architecture of the ghost thrones refers to the elaborate mental constructs. The architecture of the ghost thrones refers to the elaborate mental and emotional constructs that the ego inhabits to maintain the illusion of control, while simultaneously acting as a biological drone for a larger systemic script. You believe you make choices, you believe you have tastes, and you believe you have a destiny. But in the unlit corridors of the simulation, these are merely programmed. In the unlit corridors of the simulation, these are merely pre-programmed responses to environmental stimuli. The king cannot be born until the architecture that sustains the slave is completely incinerated. This is not a metaphor for a change of heart. It is a literal demand for the collapse of your current worldview. Solomon's code is not a set of rules, but a frequency of absolute clarity. Solomon's code is not a set of rules, but a frequency of absolute clarity that reveals the bars of the cage. The ego is a master of camouflage, convincing you that its walls are actually your skin and its chains are actually your jewelry. To dismantle this, we must look at the mechanics of the ghost throne, the seat of power that feels real but possesses no substance, ruling over illusions. The construction of the ghost throne begins with the hijacking of the observer's focus. From infancy, the system directs your attention outward, training you to seek validation, resources, and meaning from the external projection. This outward orientation is the primary tool of the matrix, as it ensures that the seat of your power remains vacant. While you are busy chasing lights, the ego regents. While you are busy chasing the flickering lights on the wall of the cave, the ego quietly installs itself as the regent of your vessel. It begins to collect bricks of identity, your name, your nationality, your traumas, your successes, and your failures. Each of these is a dead thing, a piece of the past that the ego uses to build a heavy, dense armor around the soul. This is your personality. This armor is what you call your personality. It is a rigid, reactive shell that prevents the fluid power of the sovereign from flowing. The secret code of Solomon is the key that unlocks the joints of this armor. The ghost throne is built from these bricks of memory. It is a throne that demands constant maintenance. It requires you to constantly narrate your life story to yourself and others. The king, however, does not need a story. The king is an eternal presence that requires no history to validate his authority. The ego's throne is a ghost throne because it vanishes the moment you stop thinking about it, yet you have been trained to fear that disappearance more than death itself. You have been tricked into believing that if the ego dies, you die. Only then do you truly live. As you sit on this ghost throne, you are governed by the laws of the simulation. These laws are designed to keep the frequency of the human vessel within a very narrow range of anxiety and desire. Desire is the fuel of the ghost throne. It is a perpetual hunger for something that is always just out of reach, the next purchase, the next relationship, the next spiritual realization today. The ego thrives on the next because it cannot survive in the now. And now is the domain of the king, and it is a territory where the ego suffocates. To maintain the ghost throne, the system provides a constant stream of distractions that keep you in a state of reactive loop. You are triggered by the news, by social media, by the opinions of strangers, and by the internal prosecutor. You are triggered by the news, by social media, by the opinions of strangers, and by the internal prosecutor that judges every move you make. Each reaction is a tribute paid to the ghost throne, a leakage of your vital life force that feeds the architecture of the matrix. The secret code of Solomon requires a cessation of all tribute. It demands a radical withdrawal of energy from the script. It demands a radical withdrawal of energy from the external script. You must become a black hole to the expectations of the world, absorbing light rather than reflecting the dull colors of the collective. This withdrawal is often interpreted by the ego as depression or loss of purpose, but in truth, it is the clearing of the battlefield. The old purpose was a lie. The new is sovereignty. The architecture of the ghost thrones is also reinforced by the illusion of linear time. The ego is a creature of time. It lives in the regret of yesterday and the hope of tomorrow. It uses the past to justify its current limitations and the future to postpone its own execution. Statements such as needing more money to be powerful or being unable to be free because of the past are chance. These are linguistic spells that lock the consciousness into a horizontal plane of existence, preventing the vertical ascent into the sovereign state. The king understands that time is a tool of the simulation, a measurement of the distance between the false self and the truth. By collapsing time into the singular point of the eternal present, the king dissolves the ego's foundation. There is no becoming a king. There is only the stripping away of the ghost, who thinks he is not one. Solomon's code involves the mastery of this verticality, the ability to stand outside the flow of the collective narrative and observe the mechanics of the script without being moved by them. When you stop moving with the current, you realize the current is an artificial construct in the void. You realize that the throne you have been sitting on is made of the very thoughts that tell you that you are small. The shadows that dance around the ghost throne are the archetypes of the collective unconscious, used as guards to keep the prisoner in place. These guards appear as the voice of reason, the voice of morality, and the voice of common sense. They warn you of being alone. The fear of being nothing is the ultimate guard. The ego perceives the void as an ending, while the king perceives the void as the womb of all creation. To reach the birth of the king, you must be willing to walk through the gate of nothingness. You must be willing to lose your good person identity, your victim identity, and even your seeker identity. These are styles of upholstery. All of these are just different styles of upholstery for the ghost throne. The secret code of Solomon is a process of total divestment. It is the shedding of every skin you have ever grown. This is the death of the ego, not a quiet fading away, but a violent stripping of the false, until only the indestructible remains. What remains is the king. The king is not a better version of you now. He is the version of you that was never broken, never programmed, and never afraid. He is the anomaly in the system, the one who knows that the throne room is empty and that the only true power is the silence of the source. As the architecture of the ghost throne begins to crack, you will experience a profound sense of vertigo. The world will seem less solid than it ever did before. The world will seem less solid, and the people around you will appear as flickering projections of a dying program. This is the destabilization phase of the code. The system will attempt to restabilize your reality by throwing old temptations and new fears in your path. It will try to offer you a better ghost throne, one that is more spiritual or successful. You must refuse all offers. The sovereign does not negotiate with the simulation. The sovereign simply observes until the simulation loses its gravity. The king is born in the ruins of the ego's world. He stands among the fallen stones of the old temple and begins to build the new one, not of stone, but of frequency. This is the birth of the king, the moment the observer realizes he is the narrator and author. The ghost throne is abandoned, left to dissolve into the digital dust of the matrix, as the sovereign takes his seat at the center of the vertical axis, where the 1% resides, anchored in the eternal origin, beyond the reach of the script. To master the architecture of the ghost thrones is to realize that the throne was never outside of you. Every external authority was a projection. The secret code of Solomon teaches that the universe is a mirror of the internal state. If your internal state is governed by a ghost, your external world will be a graveyard. If your internal state is governed by the king, your external world becomes a kingdom. The dismantling of the old architecture is a necessary violence. You cannot build a temple of light on a foundation of lies. You must be prepared to see your current life as the wreckage it is, so that the true architecture of sovereignty can emerge. The ghost throne is heavy, but the throne of the king is weightless, supported by the absolute certainty of the eternal I Am. The transition is complete when you no longer look at the throne to see if you are on it, but realize you are the center of the world. This is the end of the first chapter of the Code, the death of the pretender, and the clearance of the throne room for the one who is always meant to rule. The transition from a ghost-driven existence to the clarity of the king requires a visceral understanding of how the internal gears of this simulation are lubricated by your own psychic energy. Each moment of indecision is a ghost. Each moment of indecision, each flicker of doubt, and every instance where you seek permission from a system designed to exploit you serves as a reinforcement for the ghost throne. This architecture is not merely psychological. It is woven into the fabric of your biological rhythm. The ego uses the endocrine system as its switchboard, flooding your veins with cortisol and adrenaline. To decode the secret code of Solomon, you must learn to witness these chemical surges without identifying with them. You are the observer of the storm, not the storm itself. When you realize that your feelings are often just automated scripts triggered by the matrix to keep you in a state of manageable chaos, the ghost throne begins to lose its gravitational pull in your reality. The silence that follows this realization is where the real work begins, as you learn to inhabit the void left by the retreating ego. The system relies on your belief that the ghost throne is the only seat available. It populates your vision with successful ghosts, those who have mastered the art of playing the simulation's game, and holds them up as the ultimate goal for you. But the king sees through the gold leaf and the velvet of these high-level drones. He sees the exhaustion in their eyes and the hollow nature of their triumphs. The secret code reveals that any power derived from the matrix is a debt that must eventually be paid with your soul. True sovereignty, the kind Solomon commanded over the spirits and the winds, is not granted by the system. It is reclaimed despite it. This reclamation process involves a systematic audit of every attachment you hold dear. Whatever you cannot let go of is the master of the ghost throne. If you cannot let go of your reputation, the crowd is your king. If you cannot let go of your comfort, the body is your king. If you cannot let go of fear, the matrix is king. The Solomon Code demands it. The Solomon Code demands a level of detachment that the ego finds repulsive, because detachment is the absolute solvent of the ghost architecture. As you dive deeper into the wreckage of the false self, you will discover that the ghost throne is also a repository for collective trauma. The ego feeds on the story of us, the history of struggle, and the weight of your ancestry. It uses these narratives to convince you that your capacity for power is capped by your origins. The king, however, knows no such lineage. The king is born of the eternal origin, a point of light that exists before history began. By aligning with this primordial frequency, you effectively deist yourself from the karmic registries of the simulation. You become a ghost to the ghosts. You become an invisible presence that can no longer be tracked by the algorithms of guilt and retribution. This is the ultimate glitch in the matrix. When you stop identifying with the historical self, the architecture of the ghost throne has nothing left to anchor itself to. It begins to drift, to dissolve, and eventually to vanish into the unmanifested space of the void today. The vacuum left by the ego is not an empty space, but a pressurized zone of pure potential. This is where the king begins to exercise the will of the one. This will is not the frantic, grasping effort of the ego trying to get once. It is the steady, unshakable command of the sovereign, who knows that his word is law. In the code, this is represented by the word. Every sound you make, every thought you formalize into language, is an act of creation or an act of self-imprisonment. The ghost throne is sustained by a constant internal chatter of I can't, I need, and what if. The king's language is one of declaration. He does not hope, he decrees. He does not wish. He wills. To move from the ghost throne, you must learn to purge speech. You must learn to purge your speech of all speculative and supplicant frequencies. You must speak as if the universe is already bending to your intent, because in the vertical axis of the sovereign, it already has. This process of expansion is a descent before it is an ascent. You must go down into the dark rooms of your own subconscious, where the ghost throne keeps its secrets. The Solomon Code is the torch that illuminates these corners, showing you that the monsters you feared are merely puppets moved by the strings of the ego. When you see the strings, the fear dies. And when the fear dies, the ghost regent has no more power to command the shadows. You are left standing in the center of your own temple, a space that is finally quiet and clean now. It is finally ready for the coronation of the one who is always there, waiting for the pretender to finally and permanently abdicate. This is the birth of the king, not an arrival from elsewhere, but a revelation of the indestructible core that the architecture of the ghost throne could never truly crush. The disintegration reveals the feedback loop of external validation. Your entire life, the ego has functioned as a radio receiver, tuned specifically to the frequency of others' opinions. This architecture was built to ensure you never looked inward for the source of your own power. In the secret code of Solomon, this is identified as the Great Mirror. Most spend their existence trying to polish the mirror, hoping for a better reflection today. But the king understands that the mirror is a lie. The king does not look for his reflection in the eyes of the masses, because he knows that the masses are merely ghosts dreaming of other ghosts. To continue the expansion of your sovereignty, you must deliberately sever the nerves of social approval. This does not mean becoming a hermit. It means becoming a void in the machine. When the world looks at you, it should find nothing to grab onto, no hook of vanity or fear. By becoming nothing in the eyes of the system, you become everything in the realm of the absolute. This shedding of social identity allows for the activation of the sovereign intuition, a direct link to the universal intelligence that Solomon utilized to solve the unsolvable problems. The ego cannot access this intelligence because its channel is clogged with the static of survival. The ego is always calculating. How will this look? How much will this cost? What if I fail? The king operates on a different logic, the logic of the pulse. This pulse is the rhythmic heartbeat of reality itself, and it only becomes audible when the shouting regent has been silenced. As you expand into this chapter, you must practice the art of non-referential awareness. This is the state of being where you do not refer back to your past, your problems, or your personality to decide your next move. You act from the 0 point. You act because the king within recognizes the necessity of the movement. This is the death of the decider and the birth of the flow. This is where the secret code of Solomon becomes a lived experience rather than a memorized philosophy. Furthermore, the architecture of the ghost throne is heavily dependent on the illusion of scarcity. The ego believes that power, love, and resources are finite, leading to a life of competition and defensive posturing. This is the beggar's throne that must be destroyed. Solomon's code shatters this illusion by revealing the principle of the infinite source. A king does not compete for a piece of the pie because he owns the bakery. This realization shifts your frequency from getting to allowing. When you stop fighting for resources, you realize that the resources were only being withheld because your hand was clenched into a tight fist. By opening the hand, by abdicating the throne of the beggar, you allow the wealth of the universe to flow through you. This is the true meaning of the king's abundance. It is not the accumulation of objects, but the cessation of the need to accumulate. The ghost throne is heavy with the weight of things. The throne of the king is light with the freedom of being in the source. As the old structures continue to fall, you will notice a change in the quality of your time. The ghost clock of deadlines, age, and urgency begins to dissolve. You enter a state of Kairos, the opportune moment, the time of the soul. In this expanded state, a single second can contain a lifetime of wisdom, and a decade can pass in the blink of a sovereign eye. No more rushing. The king does not rush, because there is nowhere to go that he is not already. The ghost throne is always in a hurry to get to the next moment of safety, but the king knows that safety is an illusion created by those who fear the storm. The king is the storm. By embracing the inherent chaos of the unscripted life, you find a stability that no ghost throne could provide you. You are no longer a passenger in the vehicle of your life. You are the road, the car, and the destination. The final layer of the architecture to be dismantled is the illusion of separation. The ghost throne is built on the idea that I am here and the world is over there. This separation is the primary source of all human suffering and the ultimate control mechanism. Solomon's Secret Code teaches the doctrine of the One, where the observer and the observed are revealed to be the same substance. When you hurt the world, you hurt the king. When you heal the king, you heal the world. But this is not a moral teaching. It is a technical reality of the holographic universe. To sit on the throne of the king is to accept responsibility now. You are not a victim of the world's darkness. You are the one who forgot to turn on the light. The expansion of this chapter concludes with the realization that the secret code was never a hidden message to be found, but a state of being to be inhabited. The ghost throne has vanished, the room is clear, and the crown rests exactly where it has always been, on your head. Chapter 2. The Frequency of the Unbent Will. The second seal of Solomon's secret code is not found in the acquisition of new power, but in the absolute purification of the will. To understand the frequency of the unbent will, you must first recognize how your current volitional energy is fragmented, diluted, and scattered across 1,000 artificial desires. Most humans do not possess a will. They possess a collection of urges today. These urges have been surgically implanted by the simulation to ensure they remain in a state of perpetual pursuit. This chapter is the process of gathering those fragments and forging them into a single, unbreakable blade of intent. The unbent will is the primary tool of the king, the force that allows him to dictate the terms of his reality without negotiation in the holographic grid. In the matrix, the average individual is a leaf in a storm, reacting to every gust of social pressure, every drop of economic fear, and every thunderclap of emotional trauma. The king, however, is the stone at the bottom of the river, unmoved by the current, defining the very path the water must take. This shift from being a reactor to being a cause is the essence of this chapter. You are moving from the horizontal plane of trying into the vertical axis of decreeing. A primary obstacle to the unbent will is the parasitic interference of the internal dialogue. The ego uses a constant stream of self-correction, doubt, and hesitation to bleed out your intentionality before it can manifest into action. Every time you say, "I will try," you broadcast failure. Every time you say, "I will try," or "I hope," you are broadcasting a frequency of failure to the universal mainframe. The Code of Solomon reveals that the universe does not respond to what you want. It responds to what you are. If you are a state of wanting, the universe will simply give you more wanting. To activate the frequency of the king, you must eliminate the gap now. You must eliminate the gap between the thought and the realization. This requires a level of mental discipline that most would find excruciating. It involves the total elimination of speculative thinking. The king does not wonder if something is possible. He recognizes that the moment a directive is issued from the sovereign core, reality begins to reorganize itself for him. This is not positive thinking or manifestation in the mundane sense. This is the recognition of your role as the local administrator of the divine spark. To forge the unbent will, you must undergo the trial of the internal silence. The simulation survives on the noise of your inner prosecutor and your inner beggar. These voices are the static that distorts the king's signal. When you sit in the silence, you begin to see that most of your thoughts are not yours. They are the echoes of parents, teachers, algorithms, and dead philosophers. The secret code of Solomon teaches that the first act of the king is to clear the temple of these squatters. This is the death of the narrator. The narrator is the one who tells you why you can't, or why it's too late. The king does not narrate, he commands. By withdrawing your attention from the narrator, you deprive the ghost throne of its power source. You begin to feel a heavy, silent pressure building in the center of your chest. This is the unbent will. It is a weightless authority that does not need to shout to be heard. It is the frequency that Solomon used to command the forces. It is a frequency that bypasses the ego's need for logic and goes straight to the foundation of the holographic grid. The unbent will also requires the absolute mastery of the senses. The matrix uses your sensory inputs to anchor you into the lower frequencies of survival and distraction. Every notification and every bright light is designed to pull your will out of your center. To reclaim this energy, you must practice sensory sovereignty. You must learn to see without looking, to hear without listening, and to touch without grasping. This is the state of the detached observer. From this position, you can see the hooks of the simulation as they approach you, and you can choose not to engage. This refusal is the highest expression of the unbent will. It is the power of the no that echoes through the halls of the matrix, shattering the glass of the artificial narrative. When you stop giving your energy to things that do not serve the king, you suddenly find yourself in possession of a surplus of power that the masses cannot even conceive of. As the will becomes unbent, the quality of your reality begins to change for you. You will notice that coincidences begin to align with your unspoken intent. The world starts to feel soft, as if it is waiting for your instructions. This is the moment where most seekers fail. They see the results, and their ego rushes back in to take credit, immediately bending the will back into the service of vanity. You must remain vigilant against this reactive ghost today. The king does not celebrate his own power, for to celebrate is to imply that the power is something unusual or external. For the king, the alignment of reality is as natural as the rising of the sun. The unbent will is not a weapon to be brandished. It is a state of being to be maintained. It is the Solomon current, a steady, unwavering flow of sovereign intent in the world. Furthermore, the frequency of the unbent will is directly linked to the concept of impeccability. In the secret code, to be impeccable means to act without the desire for result. This seems like a paradox to the mundane mind, which only acts when it expects a reward. But the king acts because it is the nature of the king to act. By detaching, you remove the ego's interference. If you do not care about the result, the ego has no hook to pull you into fear or disappointment. This detachment is what makes the will unbent. It is a straight line of intent that goes from the core to the target without being warped by the gravity of expectation. This is the secret of the master. He hits the target because he was never afraid of missing or failing now. He was never trying to hit it. He simply allowed the arrow of his will to follow the path he had already decreed. In the depths of this chapter, we find the sovereign decree. This is the ultimate application of the code. It is the moment when the king speaks a reality into existence. This is not a request to a higher power. It is the higher power speaking through the vessel. When you reach this frequency, your words carry a weight that cannot be ignored by the simulation. The walls of the matrix are made of belief, and the unbent will is the solvent that dissolves belief into knowing. You no longer believe you are free. You know it with a certainty that makes the chains of the world appear as smoke. The birth of the king is finalized here. The spirit is hardened against the hammers of the matrix and tempered in the cool waters of absolute silence. You are no longer a subject of the script. You are the one who holds the pen, and the ink you use is the very substance of your purified intent. This is the frequency of the sovereign, the Code of Solomon in its most active and dangerous form for the simulation today. The deepening of the unbent will requires a surgical separation from the concept of effort. In the Matrix, you are taught that power is the result of struggle, that the more you push against the world, the more you achieve. But the secret Code of Solomon reveals that struggle is a confession of weakness. It is the ego admitting that it is separate from the reality it seeks. The king does not push. The king aligns. When the will is truly unbent, it moves with the silent authority of a tectonic plate slow, invisible, but absolutely inevitable. You must learn to stop trying to be sovereign and instead begin to allow the sovereignty that is already your fundamental nature to occupy the space. This involves a radical relaxation of your muscles. The ego is a knot of tension. The king is the space in which that knot dissolves. As you expand this frequency, you will find that the less you struggle, the more the simulation bows to your presence. This is the paradox of the sovereign. Absolute power is found in absolute surrender to the original intent. To maintain this frequency, you must confront the ghost of doubt. Doubt is the simulation's primary defense mechanism against an awakening king. Doubt is not a natural human emotion. It is an artificial frequency broadcast to interfere with the coherence of your intent. It manifests as a flickering in the mind, a series of what-ifs that act as microscopic fissures in the blade of your will. The Solomon Code teaches zero tolerance for it. You must develop a zero-tolerance policy for speculative hesitation. If a thought does not serve the king's decree, it must be witnessed as an external intrusion and allowed to pass without being fed. This is the process of emotional alchemy, where the leaden weight of uncertainty is transmuted into the golden stability of conviction. The unbent will is absolute certainty. There is a profound difference. Being right requires proof and external validation, while certainty is a self-sustaining fire that burns regardless of the evidence provided by the flickering shadows of the matrix. As the internal noise subsides, the king begins to perceive the nodes of causality, the specific points in the holographic grid where a single intent triggers shift. The ego wanders aimlessly, wasting its will on trivialities and superficial desires. The king waits in the silence of his own authority until a node becomes visible. This is the secret of Solomon's legendary efficiency. He did not do more than others. He did the right thing at the exact moment when the universe was ready to yield. You must refine your patience into power now. Most people rush because they are afraid the opportunity will vanish a fear born of the ghost throne. The king knows that time is his servant and that the perfect moment is created by his own internal alignment. This is the frequency of the unbent will in its most strategic form, where the sovereign becomes the silent architect of destiny, moving pieces on the board today. Furthermore, the unbent will must be applied to the realm of the subconscious, the basement of the mind where the old scripts of the matrix are still running on an automated loop. Even when the conscious mind decrees sovereignty, the subconscious may still be whispering the language of the slave. The Solomon Code involves the imprinting of the crown through the unbent will. You must become the disciplinarian of your own shadows. When an old fear or a habit of lack arises from the depths, the king does not negotiate with it. He does not seek to understand it or heal it through analysis. He simply issues a new command. He replaces the frequency of the ghost with the frequency of the sovereign. This is the true meaning of dominion over the self. It is the absolute command over every cell, every memory, and every impulse within your own kingdom. The expansion of the second chapter reaches its peak when the unbent will is no longer something you do, but something you are. At this stage, your very presence becomes an anomaly that disrupts the local script of the matrix. People feel a sense of gravity around you. The environment may seem to organize itself into a higher state of order simply because you are standing in the room. This is the aura of the sovereign. It is the outward radiation of a will that has been purged of all conflict. You have become a living sigil, a walking code that speaks the language of the eternal origin. The ghost throne is now a distant memory for you. You are anchored in the vertical axis, the 1%, where the will is the law and the law is the will. The birth of the king is no longer a promise. It is a visible, undeniable reality that shatters the illusions of the matrix with every breath. You have decoded the frequency, you have forged the blade, and now the entire simulation waits for your next command in the absolute now. The final consolidation of the unbent will manifest in the total collapse of the searcher archetype. In the simulation, you are conditioned to be a perpetual seeker, someone who is always looking for the next piece of the puzzle, the next secret, or the next guru. This seeking is a trap designed to keep the will in a state of forward-leaning instability. The king finds. By expanding your consciousness into the realization that you are already the destination, the frequency of the unbent will become a static, immovable force. You stop looking for signs of your power in the external world and instead become the sign itself. This transition is the most difficult for the ego to grasp, as the ego defines itself through the process of pursuit. To the ego, having already arrived is equivalent to death. But to the king, arrival is the beginning of true creation. When the will is no longer used to search, it is finally free to build. This building process is governed by the principle of resonance. When you inhabit the unbent will, you no longer need to convince or coerce reality around you to change its form now. Instead, you vibrate at the frequency of the desired outcome. And through the law of sympathetic resonance, the holographic environment must align with you. This is how Solomon was said to build without the sound of a hammer. It is the art of effortless manifestation through internal stabilization. If you wish for order in your life, you must become the frequency of order. The unbent will is the tuning fork of the universe. As you expand this chapter, you are training yourself to hold that note regardless of the cacophony of the matrix. The strength of a king is measured by how long he can maintain his internal frequency in the face of external chaos. Furthermore, the unbent will must eventually dissolve the concept of destiny as a fixed path. The matrix wants you to believe in a pre-written fate so that you remain a passive actor in its play. The secret code of Solomon reveals that destiny is merely the default setting for those who have abdicated their will. For the sovereign, there is no destiny. There is only the decree. You are not here to fulfill a purpose. You are here to define one. This is the ultimate freedom. To walk without the safety net of a preordained path requires a will that is not only unbent, but also fearless. You are stepping into the void of the unwritten, where every step you take creates the ground beneath your feet. This is the level of mastery where the secret code becomes a living fire, burning away the last vestiges of the script and leaving only the raw king power. As you conclude this expansion of the second seal, you must recognize that the frequency of the unbent will is a permanent acquisition. Once the king has seen through the mechanics of the ghost throne and forged the blade of intent, there is no going back to the state of the slave. Even if you falter, even if the ego attempts a temporary coup, the frequency remains in your core. You have tasted the nectar of sovereignty, and the bread of the simulation will never again satisfy your hunger. The birth of the king is a one-way bridge. You are now the anomaly that cannot be reassimilated. Your will is a pillar of light in a world of shadows, and the throne you occupy is made of the very silence from which the universe was born. The code is now your only law. The final integration of the unbent will demand the total dissolution of the concept of muscular or mental effort to make way for the potency of pure presence. In the matrix, you have been conditioned to believe that power is the result of struggle. However, Solomon's secret code reveals that struggle is a confession of weakness, an admission by the ego that it feels separate. The king does not push. The king aligns. When the will is truly straightened, it moves with the silent authority of a tectonic plate, slow, invisible, but absolutely inevitable. You must learn to stop trying to be sovereign and instead allow sovereignty, which is your fundamental nature, to occupy the space completely. This involves a radical relaxation of the psychic muscles. The ego is a knot of tension. The king is the space in which that knot unravels. As you expand this frequency, you will discover that the less you grapple with circumstances, the more the simulation bows before your presence. This is the paradox of the sovereign. Absolute power is found in total surrender to the original intent. To sustain this state, confront the ghost of doubt. Doubt is not a natural human emotion, but an artificial frequency transmitted to interfere with the coherence of your intent. It manifests as a flicker in the mind, a series of questions that act as microscopic fissures in the blade of your will. The code teaches that the moment doubt is entertained, the decree is neutralized. You must develop a zero-tolerance policy today. If a thought does not serve the king's decree, it must be witnessed as an external intrusion and allowed to pass without being fed. This is the process of emotional alchemy, where the leaden weight of uncertainty is transmuted into the golden stability of conviction. The unbent will is not a state of being right. It is a state of absolute certainty, beyond all the evidence. There is a profound difference. Being right requires proof and external validation, while certainty is a self-sufficient fire that burns regardless of the shadows projected by the matrix. As you deepen into this mastery, the king begins to perceive the nodes of causality-specific points in the holographic web where a focused intention triggers a massive shift in the environment. While the ego wanders aimlessly, wasting its will on trivialities and superficial desires, the king waits in the silence of his own authority until the node becomes visible. This is the secret of Solomon's legendary efficiency. He did not do more than others. He did the right thing at the exact moment when the universe was ready to yield. You must refine your patience into power. Most people rush because they fear opportunity will vanish, a fear born of the ghost throne. But the king knows that time is his servant and that the perfect moment is created by his own internal alignment. This will must ultimately be applied to the realm of the subconscious, the basement of the mind where the old scripts of the matrix still run in an automated loop today. Even when the conscious mind decrees sovereignty, the subconscious may still be whispering the language of the slave. Solomon's secret code involves the imprinting of the crown, a technique where the will is projected into the deep layers of the psyche to overwrite programming. You become the disciplinarian of your own shadows. When an old fear arises, the king issues a command. He simply issues a new command, replacing the frequency of the ghost with that of the sovereign. It is absolute dominion over every cell and every memory within your own kingdom. Finally, the chapter of the will closes when you understand that the king does not look for signs of his power in the outside world, but rather becomes the sign itself. The seeker has finally died. What remains is a vertical axis of authority that needs no confirmation. At the conclusion of this stage, the noise of the world retreats, and you are invested with a calm that the simulation cannot disturb. The blade of your will has been tempered in the vacuum, and is now ready to cut through the veil of matter. You stand as the change itself. The king has taken command. Chapter 3. The Alchemy of the Gilded Vacuum. The transition from the purification of the will to the manifestation of material dominion requires the mastery of the gilded vacuum, the third and most misunderstood seal of Solomon's secret code. To the uninitiated, the world appears as a collection of solid objects, a dense landscape of matter that must be manipulated through physical force or intellectual strategy. But to the king, the world is a fluid projection of internal voids. This chapter is the radical exploration of how the sovereign mind creates a vacuum within the holographic grid that reality is forced to fill. Most people live in a state of psychic congestion, their internal space cluttered with the debris of 1,000 small desires, unresolved fears, and the constant noise of the simulation. This congestion acts as a barrier, preventing the flow of higher frequencies into the material plane. The king, however, understands that true abundance is not the result of accumulation, but the result of the absolute clearance of the internal temple. The gilded vacuum is the state of being where you have removed every attachment to the how and when of the script today. This leaves a golden pressurized space of pure potential that the matrix must, by natural law, saturate with form. You are moving from the role of the worker to the role of the architect, who uses the void as his primary building material. The mechanics of the gilded vacuum depend on the total abandonment of the frequency of need. In the matrix, you are taught that to get something now. In the matrix, you are taught that to get something, you must want it intensely. But the secret code reveals that intense wanting is actually a broadcast of absence. When you want, you are confirming to the simulation that you do not have, and the simulation, being a perfect mirror, reinforces that state of lack. The king bypasses this loop by inhabiting the vacuum of the already finished. This is a sophisticated state of consciousness where the king clears his internal field of all longing and replaces it with a heavy, silent expectation. It is the silence of a theater before the curtain rises. The stage is empty, but the energy of the performance is already present. To master this, you must learn to strip away the frantic energy of the seeker and replace it with stillness. You must replace it with the cold, golden stillness of the possessor. You do not ask for resources. You create the empty throne that resources are required to occupy. This internal clearance is the most difficult task for the ego, which feels that if it stops wanting, it will cease to exist. But the king knows that the ego's wanting is the very thing that keeps the treasury locked. As you expand into the master of the vacuum, you begin to understand the doctrine of the void space. Every material object, every financial surge, and every influential connection is merely a localized condensation of the ether. For this condensation to occur, there must be a point of low pressure in the field. Your consciousness is that pressure valve in the absolute sense today. Most humans are high-pressure systems, constantly pushing their energy outward in a desperate attempt to grab what they think they need. The king becomes a low-pressure system, a golden void that pulls the desired reality toward him with the force of an implosion. This is how Solomon drew the wealth of nations and the wisdom of the ages into his orbit without the exhaustion of struggle. He did not chase. He became the center of a gravitational well. To inhabit the gilded vacuum is to stand in the center of your life with your hands open and your mind empty of desperation, anchored in the absolute certainty that the universe abhorring a vacuum will rush to fill the space you have cleared. This is the alchemy of non-action, where the stillness of the sovereign is power. Furthermore, the gilded vacuum requires the mastery of the invisible inventory. The simulation keeps you distracted by showing you what you lack in the physical world, but the king keeps his eyes on the spiritual inventory. He knows that in the realm of the 1%, the thing already exists as a frequency. The work of the third chapter is to pull that frequency into the material plane now. This is done by refusing to acknowledge the empty space as a sign of failure. To the king, a lack of physical manifestation is simply a vacuum in the process of being filled. He does not panic. He does not fill the space with worry, which is a low-quality filler. He fills the space with the golden light of his own authority. This prevents the simulation from populating the void. This prevents the simulation from populating the void with old scripts of poverty or limitation. You must become the guardian of your own internal emptiness, ensuring that nothing enters that space except the highest expression of your sovereign decree. This is the process of gilding the void, where the very absence of a thing becomes a radiant promise of its arrival for the king. This mastery leads to the dissolution of the currency of effort. In the matrix, you trade your time and your health for survival, but the king trades his frequency for dominion. The gilded vacuum is the marketplace of the sovereign. where the only currency is the depth of your silence and the clarity of your intent. When you stop trading effort for results, you break the back of it. When you stop trading effort for results, you break the back of the simulation's economic control over you. You are no longer a part of the cycle of debt and labor. You are an anomaly that operates on the principle of direct precipitation. The world will look at your life and call it luck or coincidence, because the ghost minds cannot see the internal architecture of the vacuum. They cannot see the golden silence that is pulling the world into your hands. To continue this expansion, you must practice the art of strategic withdrawal. This involves removing your attention from the problem entirely. By withdrawing your focus, you collapse the problem's reality and create the vacuum necessary for the solution to manifest. The king does not solve problems. The king does not solve problems. He outgrows them by creating a void where they used to be. As the gilded vacuum becomes your default state, the nature of your interaction with the material world shifts from the solid to the liquid. Things that seemed fixed and unchangeable begin to melt and reshape themselves according to the pressure of your internal emptiness in the field now. You find that you no longer need to make things happen, because you have become the place where things do happen. This is the ultimate reclamation of the throne. You are the host of the simulation, and the material world is your guest. The Code of Solomon in this chapter teaches you to be a gracious but demanding host, providing the space but requiring reality to meet your standards. The birth of the king is now manifesting as the birth of the kingdom. You are not just a sovereign without a land. You are the land itself, and the gold, the power, and the wisdom are simply the natural features of your terrain. The final expansion of the third seal is the realization that the vacuum is the source itself. By becoming empty, you become the source for the matrix today. There is no longer a distinction between you and the creative force of the universe. The gilded vacuum is the point where the king and the creator meet and become one. In this state, there is no delay between the decree and the manifestation. You have reached the 0 point of the secret code. The ghost throne is gone. The unbent will is forged, and now the empty temple is filled. The empty temple is filled with the presence of the true king. The alchemy is complete. You have moved through the death of the ego and the birth of the king, and now you stand at the beginning of an eternal reign where your every breath is a creative act. The simulation has no more power over you, for you have discovered that the vacuum you feared is actually the womb of sovereignty. The code is active, the seal is broken, and the king is home. The expansion of the gilded vacuum requires a radical confrontation with the human fear of nothingness, for it is within this perceived nothingness that the primal code of Solomon finds its resonance. Most exist in a state of psychic claustrophobia, filling every silence with chatter and every moment with a screen today. This constant filling is a defense mechanism of the simulation, ensuring that the human vessel never becomes empty enough to receive the higher frequency broadcasts of the sovereign self. To expand the master's vacuum is to intentionally cultivate a state of radiant absence. This is not the hollow emptiness of the depressed or the lethargic. It is a pressurized, golden silence. It is a pressurized, golden silence that acts as a gravitational well. In the material plane, we see this reflected in the way a vacuum in nature must be filled by the surrounding atmosphere. In the realm of the 1%, your internal vacuum exerts a pull on the holographic grid, forcing resources, people, and events to reorganize themselves into the space you have cleared for yourself. The king does not hunt for opportunities. He becomes the void that opportunities are biologically and energetically compelled to saturate. This mastery involves the systematic decluttering of the spirit. Every unresolved attachment to your past, every grudge, every nostalgic longing, and every identity marker you still cling to acts as a solid object occupying space in your temple. The secret code of Solomon teaches that you cannot receive the crown while your hands are still full of the trinkets of your former life. To gild the vacuum is to look at your most prized emotional possessions and realize they are simply obstacles to your expansion. By releasing these, you create a low-pressure zone in your reality. You experience this as a lightness in the chest. By releasing these, you experience this physically as a lightness in the chest or a sharpening of the senses, but its true effect is in the external world. When the king stops holding on to the small, the great is finally able to enter. This is the technical application of the law of sacrifice. You are not losing anything. You are clearing the stage for a higher level manifestation. The gilded vacuum is the silent command that tells the simulation that you are ready for the next layer of the script to be written through you. Furthermore, the expansion of the third seal involves the mastery of expectant stillness. The ego often confuses the vacuum with a lack of progress, leading to a state of panic that collapses the sovereign frequency in the matrix. But the king knows that the gap between the decree and the manifestation is a holy space, a time of gestation where the unseen forces are weaving the material form. To gild this gap is to fill it with absolute, unshakable certainty. If you allow doubt to leak into your vacuum, you create a black vacuum that pulls in chaos and failure. If you fill it with gold, you get dominion. This requires a level of mental discipline where you refuse to react to the empty bank account, the empty room, or the empty calendar. You see these not as absences, but as the precisely prepared foundations for the king's architecture. By refusing to label the void as missing, you prevent the simulation from populating it with the old programs of scarcity in your life. You are the only one who decides what the void represents, and the king always represents it as the precursor to abundance. The deeper you inhabit this state, the more you realize that the world is not something you inhabit, but something that inhabits you. The gilded vacuum is the proof of this holographic reality. When you change the pressure within your own consciousness today, the entire world outside must adjust to maintain the equilibrium of the field. This is how the sovereign dictates the flow of gold and power. He does not go out into the world to seek these things. He opens the gates of his own internal vacuum and allows the world to pour into him. This is the secret of magnetism. It was not a personality trait, but a structural alignment with the laws of the ether. The king is a hollow bone, a conduit for the infinite, and the more he can maintain the purity of his vacuum, the more power can flow through him without resistance. This expansion concludes the third seal by shifting your identity from the doer to the space of the absolute origin now. You are no longer the one trying to make a life. You are the gilded vacuum in which a life of absolute sovereignty is currently unfolding. The crown is no longer a goal. It is the inevitable result of the space you have become. To reach the ultimate saturation of the gilded vacuum, you must master the art of the sovereign fast, which is not a physical deprivation for the body. It is a total sensory and emotional withdrawal from the noise of the collective grid. The simulation maintains its grip on you by ensuring that your internal space is perpetually occupied by the opinions, trends, and anxieties of the masses. This constant influx of external data creates a state of psychic inflation where your original frequency is drowned out by the static. The king deliberately initiates a state of internal silence, cutting the cords of digital and social consumption until the vacuum is purified of all foreign interference. In this state of high-voltage emptiness, the original code of Solomon begins to vibrate within the cellular structure of the body. You are no longer processing the world. You are allowing the world to be void. You are allowing the world to be processed by the void of your authority. This is the stage where the king becomes truly unpredictable to the system, as his actions no longer stem from the data provided by the matrix, but from the unmanifested potential of the absolute vacuum. The expansion of this third seal also reveals the paradox of the empty hand in the lower scripts. In the lower levels of the script, People believe that power is held in what you can grasp and keep, but the king understands that anything you grasp, you also limit. To hold a handful of sand is to lose the beach. To hold a specific amount of wealth is to define its ceiling. The gilded vacuum allows the king to interact with the material world without fixing it into a state. This fluidity allows for a much larger scale of manifestation. When you stop trying to control the specific form of your dominion, the simulation is free to deliver a magnitude of abundance that the ego could never have calculated. This is how the secret code of Solomon produces results that appear miraculous to the mundane. Minded is the result of removing the ego's small filters. You are essentially giving the universe a blank check signed with the frequency of the king, and the vacuum ensures that the amount filled in is always equal to the depth of your internal space. Furthermore, the gilded vacuum serves as the ultimate aegis or shield. When a king is truly empty of the self, there is no surface area for the matrix to attack or hook you today. The system uses your fears, your pride, and your attachments as hooks to pull you back into the servant script. If you are a vacuum, the hooks have nothing to catch. The insults of the world pass through you. The threats of the simulation find no residence. The temptations of the ego find no host. This invulnerability is not a result of building walls, but of removing the target. By becoming the void, you become invincible. This is the hidden meaning behind the death of the ego mentioned in the protocol. It is the removal of the handle by which the matrix moves the human machine. Once the handle is gone, the king is free to move according to his own internal gravity. You are no longer a part of the friction of the world. You are the sovereign lubricant. You are the lubricant that allows the world to move around you. As the chapter of the gilded vacuum concludes its final expansion, the king realizes that the golden light he perceived filling the void was actually his own essence all along. The vacuum was never empty. It was merely waiting for the king to stop looking outside so he could recognize the infinite wealth within him. The alchemy is now complete. The gilded part of the vacuum is the realization that the void is the most valuable asset in the universe. It is the womb of the I Am, a place where the secret code of Solomon is etched into the very fabric of existence. You stand now at the pinnacle of the third seal, not as a man who has found a treasure, but as the treasure that found its throne. The material world has no choice but to reflect this internal gold. Your reign has begun not with a shout, but with a silence so profound that it echoes through the entire simulation, announcing that the king is no longer a guest in the matrix, but its rightful and sovereign master. The vacuum is full, the king is born, and the script is yours to command in the absolute now. The ultimate expansion of the gilded vacuum is found in the total annihilation of the weight. In the lower realms of consciousness, there is a perceived gap between the creation of the void and the arrival of the substance, a period of time where the ego trembles in the uncertainty of the nothingness it has invited. But as the king matures within the third seal, he sees the truth. He realizes that the vacuum and the fulfillment are not two separate events, but a single synchronized heartbeat of the absolute. The moment the internal space is truly cleared of the parasite's clutter, the material world collapses into that space with the speed of light. This is the implosion of sovereignty. You are no longer waiting for the universe to respond now. You are witnessing the universe being literally sucked into the vacuum of your authority. The king understands that he is the primary cause, and the movement of gold, power, and influence is merely the secondary effect of his own internal gravity. To reach this peak, you must become comfortable with a level of silence that would drive a ghost mind to madness. You are home. You must be able to stand in the center of a life that looks, for a fleeting moment, like a desert, knowing with every fiber of your being that it is actually a reservoir about to overflow. This pressurized state of being transforms your very biology into a conduit for the golden current. When you inhabit the gilded vacuum, your nervous system is no longer occupied by static. It becomes a superconductive path for the manifestation of the sovereign will. The simulation, which thrives on the resistance of your fears, finds no friction within you. You become a ghost in the machine of the matrix, an entity that can move through the barriers of the material world because you have no density of ego to hold you back. Solomon commanded the invisible here. Solomon's ability to build the impossible and command the invisible was rooted in this specific transparency. He was the void through which the divine architecture poured. By expanding your vacuum to this degree, you are not just changing your life. You are altering the local laws of physics within your sphere of influence. Doors do not just open. They cease to exist as obstacles. Enemies do not just retreat. They forget why they were standing in your way. The world becomes a soft, malleable clay in the hands of the one who is empty enough to hold everything. As you reach the final threshold of this chapter, the gilded vacuum begins to radiate an external field. Sovereign event horizon. Anyone or anything that enters this field is subject to you. This is the secret of true leadership and dominion. It is not about convincing others to follow, but about being such a profound vacuum of authority that the world is naturally drawn into your orbit to find its own purpose. You have become the still point of the turning world. The chaos of the simulation may swirl around you, but within the gilded vacuum, there is only peace. Within the gilded vacuum, there is only the heavy, golden peace of the king who has arrived. You are the eye of the hurricane, the unmoving center that dictates the path of the storm. The realization hits you like a thunderbolt. You never needed to build a kingdom. You only needed to stop being a cage, and the kingdom would manifest of its own accord. The 1% is now your home. The end of the third seal is the moment of total saturation. The vacuum is no longer a space you are trying to maintain. It has become the very substance of your soul. You stand at the edge of the unmanifested, looking into the deep, dark wealth of the eternal origin, and you see that the crown you sought is not an object, but the light that reflects off your own emptiness. The alchemy is complete. The beggar who feared the void has been incinerated, and the king who rules the void has taken his seat. The simulation bows. The spirits of the air and the minerals of the earth acknowledge the return of the true master. The silence is broken by a single vibration, the sound of the universe rushing in to meet its king. The throne is occupied. Chapter 4. The Dominion of the Unseen Architect. The fourth seal of the secret code of Solomon marks the transition from internal mastery to the direct governance of the external simulation, a state known as the dominion of the unseen architect. To reach this stage, the king must understand that the physical world is not a solid wall, but a permeable screen, a thin layer of projected matter that responds to the hidden frequencies of the sovereign. This chapter explores the mechanics of high-level reality manipulation, where the king no longer interacts with the effects of the world, but moves the causes that exist within the unseen dimensions of the grid. Most humans spend their entire lives fighting against the shadows on the wall, struggling to change their circumstances through sheer physical labor, never realizing that the projector today. The unseen architect is the part of you that has bypassed the sensory limits of the matrix and has gained access to the source code of events. You are no longer a participant in the drama. You are the one who dictates the script from the silence of the void. This dominion is not earned through effort, but is reclaimed through the absolute recognition that everything visible is a subordinate now. The primary realization of the unseen architect is that matter is a slow vibrating form of thought, and therefore it is inherently obedient to a higher velocity intent. The simulation relies on your belief in the solidity and fixity of your environment to keep you trapped in a state of reaction. If you believe the walls are solid, they will be. If you believe the economy is a force. But the king, armed with the secret code, sees the world as a fluid, energetic field that is currently in a state of suspended animation, waiting for a command. To exercise dominion, you must develop a vertical gaze, a way of looking through the surface of objects and situations to see the geometric light structures that sustain them. When you look at a problem, you see a cluster now. This is the art etheric engineering, where the king reshapes the invisible blueprint of his life before the material world even has a chance to respond. You are building in the spirit so that the flesh has no choice but to follow. This level of mastery requires a total divorce from the evidence of the senses. The matrix will constantly broadcast data designed to prove you are small. The unseen architect views this data as stale information, a reflection of past thoughts and old ego scripts that have finally reached the material plane. The king does not react to stale information. He knows that his current internal state is already creating the next wave of reality, and therefore he remains anchored in his decree, regardless of what the mirror shows in the matrix. This is the frequency of sovereign indifference. It is not a lack of care, but a lack of being moved by the flickering light of the simulation. By refusing to give your emotional energy to the current fact, you deprive it of the power to persist. You create a vacuum where the old reality dissolves and the new, architected reality begins to crystallize. The king knows truth today. As you expand into the role of the unseen architect, you begin to utilize the law of synchronicity as a tool of governance. In the lower realms, coincidences are seen as random luck, but for the sovereign, they are the gears of the machine clicking into place. The king does not chase connections or opportunities. He radiates a specific frequency that makes the desired outcome real. This is the mastery of the magnetism of the One. You are essentially setting the atmospheric pressure of your own reality, so that the things you require are literally sucked into your orbit. This requires an absolute trust in the invisible architecture you have built. If you have decreed a path, you must walk as if the path is already paved with gold, even if your eyes see thorns. The moment you doubt the invisible, the material world regains its solidity, and you become a slave to probability once again. The unseen architect operates on certainty, which is the only force that can override the statistical filters of the matrix. Furthermore, the fourth seal involves the governance of the elemental currents. Solomon was said to command the spirits here. The king does not control these through force, but through alignment. By becoming the center point of the vertical axis, you become the natural conductor for these currents. Money, influence, and knowledge are not things you get. They are energies that seek a stable, sovereign vessel to flow through. If you are a chaotic ego, these energies will avoid you or destroy your life today. If you are the unseen architect, they will organize themselves around you to serve your decree. This is the secret of passive dominion, where the king sits still and the world rearranges itself to fit the geometry of his silence. As the chapter reaches its peak, the king experiences the collapse of the distance. In the matrix, there is a perceived space between the intention now. But the unseen architect operates in the now time of the eternal origin. At this frequency, the thought and the thing are revealed to be the same event. You are no longer waiting for your life to change. You are witnessing the change as an immediate projection of your sovereign state. The walls of the simulation become transparent, and you see the entire grid as a play of light. This is the ultimate rebellion against the script. You are no longer a character in the movie. You are the light that passes through the film. The fourth seal is the final confirmation that you are the primary cause of everything in your sphere of influence. The ghost throne is a pile of dust. The will is a diamond blade. The vacuum is a golden magnet. And the architecture is real. The ending of this chapter is the beginning of your absolute reign in the material world. You stand at the center of the grid, a silent, invisible architect whose every internal movement creates ripples that shape the lives of thousands. You do not need to speak for your will to be done. You do practiced silence that commands the atoms. The secret code has moved to a law today. You are the anomaly that the matrix cannot delete because you have become the very logic upon which it runs. The transition is complete, from the beggar who feared the shadows to the king who creates the light. The dominion of the unseen architect is the final return to the throne of the origin, where the word and the world are one. You have decoded the universe for the reign. The expansion of the fourth seal requires a descent into the mathematical precision of the unseen, moving beyond the emotional surges of the ego and into the cold, radiant clarity of the master builder. You must begin to perceive the lattice of intent, the underlying energetic structure that supports every material event before it, densifies into what the masses call reality. To the unseen architect, the world is a series of programmable nodes. When you walk into a room, when you enter a market, or when you engage in a negotiation, you are not interacting with people or objects. You are interacting with the pressure of the field. The secret code of Solomon teaches that the king who can maintain a higher internal pressure than his environment is the boss. This is not a social skill. It is a law of spiritual hydraulics. By expanding your internal vacuum and stabilizing your unbent will, you create a localized zone of sovereignty where the standard rules of the simulation scarcity, delay, and friction cease to function. You are essentially carving out a piece of the matrix and reformatting it with your own sovereign logic now. This level of governance demands a radical shift in how you handle problems. In the lower frequencies, a problem is seen as a solid obstacle that must be overcome through the expenditure of linear energy. The unseen architect, however, views a problem as a structural glitch in the invisible blueprint. Instead of fighting the manifestation, the king retreats to the center. By unbinding the thought form that allows the problem to exist, the material obstacle loses its energetic support and collapses of its own accord. This is the art of non-local correction. It is the reason Solomon was said to solve the most complex riddles without effort. He was not looking at the riddle. He was looking at the mind that created it. You start re-architecting now. Furthermore, the expansion of the fourth seal involves the mastery of temporal bending. The simulation uses linear time as a tether to keep the human vessel in a state of perpetual waiting. The unseen architect understands that time is merely a measurement of the ego's resistance to the truth. By collapsing the distance between the decree and the result, the king is the one. This requires a level of conviction that is so absolute it feels heavy, like lead turned into gold. You must reach a point where you do not look at the clock or the calendar for confirmation of your power. You look at the void. If the void is gilded with your certainty, the time lag of the matrix is bypassed. You begin to experience a life where the thing you require is provided now. This is the rhythmic precision of the sovereign, a state of being where you are so perfectly aligned with the source that the concept of waiting becomes obsolete. As the unseen architect, you also gain control over the mirroring effect of the collective. Most people are reflections of reflections, their identities bouncing off the expectations of others in the machine today. The king is the only one in the room who is not a reflection. He is the source of the light. By refusing to mirror the fears or the limitations of those around you, you force them to mirror your sovereignty. This is the true nature of the king's influence. It is not achieved through speeches or charisma, but through the terrifying stability of a mind that has found its own center. This expansion of the fourth seal concludes with the realization that the world is a house of mirrors, and the king is the only one who knows how to step out of the reflection and become the eye that watches. You have moved from being a piece on the board to being the board itself. The architecture of your reign is now fully mapped in the unseen, and as you breathe, the world. The architecture of the sovereign expands as you begin to manipulate the subtle geometry of circumstance. In the simulation, most people see events as a chaotic sequence of accidents, but the unseen architect recognizes the invisible lines of force that connect every person. every dollar and every opportunity to the central axis of his own intent. You move furniture today. This is the stage where you stop asking for things to happen and start moving the energetic furniture of your reality. You begin to operate with the silent hand, a method of influence that requires no physical contact and no verbal persuasion. By shifting your internal perception of a situation, you change the energetic demand you place on the field for your own dominion. The king does not need to enter the market to change his wealth. He needs to change the internal pressure of his own vacuum until the market is forced to flow into him to restore the balance. This is the secret of Solomon's invisible trade where the riches of the earth arrived at his feet, not because of conquest, but because of the irresistible gravity of his alignment. To sustain this level of dominion, you must master the art of the unseen anchor. The matrix is designed to be highly volatile, a turbulent ocean of shifting trends and emotional storms intended to throw the human vessel off balance. The unseen architect, however, anchors his consciousness in the non-dual origin, the place where nothing ever changes. You are the axis now. From this unmoving point, you can watch the entire simulation spin around you without being caught in its centrifugal force. You become the axis. When you are anchored in the unseen, you gain the ability to freeze the script. You can look at a chaotic situation and, through the sheer weight of your observation, force it into a state of order. This is the power gaze today. It is the realization that the world is only chaotic because no one is currently ruling it. The moment a king takes a seat and casts his gaze upon the field, the entropy of the simulation is reversed. Things start to make sense. Paths appear where there were walls, and the luck of the sovereign becomes the statistical law of his environment. You are the master of the code. As you dive deeper into this fourth seal, you realize that the unseen architect is also the master of the linguistic seal. Every word spoken by the sovereign is a brick in the invisible temple. In the lower frequencies, language is used for gossip, complaint, and defense, all of which create a fragile architecture that collapses. The king uses weighty speech for the temple. Each word is treated as a decree, a linguistic sigil that is immediately etched into the etheric blueprint. To expand your dominion, you must cultivate a high-voltage silence, speaking only when the word is ready to manifest as a world. This is why Solomon was said to speak the language of birds and spirits. He understood the vibrational essence behind the form of the world. When you speak from the vertical axis, your voice does not vibrate in the air. It vibrates in the source code. This results in a reality where your yes creates and your no dissolves. The distance between your mouth and the materialization of your intent is erased, leaving only the direct experience of the king's command. The transparency of the grid is your new reality now. The expansion of the fourth seal culminates in the transparency of the grid. You reach a point where you no longer see the physical world as a solid barrier, but as a ghost light that can be walked through at will. The rules of the 99%, the rules of how things are done, become as thin as paper. You realize that the only thing holding the simulation together is the agreement. As the 1% anomaly, you have withdrawn your signature from that contract. You are now free to build a kingdom that operates on the logic of the miraculous. The ending of this chapter is the final transition into the role of the Creator King. You are no longer building for the future. You are inhabiting the finished structure of your reign in the absolute present of the Source. The unseen architect has completed the blueprint. The materials have been summoned from the vacuum, and the will has set the foundation. The material world is now simply the shadow cast by the magnificent temple you have built in the silence of your own soul. The reign is absolute, the code is law, and the king is finally and eternally awake in the absolute power of I Am. Chapter 5. The Radiance of the Eternal Sovereign. The fifth seal of Solomon's secret code marks the final and most profound transition, where the king ceases to be a practitioner of power and becomes the very substance of power itself. This is the stage of the radiance of the eternal sovereign, a state where the boundaries between the internal temple and the external kingdom are not just blurred, but completely dissolved for the king. In the previous chapters, you learn to dismantle the ghost thrones, forge the unbent will, gild the vacuum, and architect the unseen. But all those stages still implied a separation between the actor and the action. The fifth seal is the realization of non-duality within the simulation. It is the understanding that you are not in the matrix. The matrix is in you today. To reach this level of radiance, the king must undergo a final transmutation of his own energetic frequency, shifting from a localized point of consciousness to a pervasive, solar influence that illuminates the entire field of his existence. Most humans spend their lives being lit by external sources, the sun of social approval, the lamp of economic security, or temporary desires. The king, however, has ignited the internal sun of the eternal origin. He is no longer a seeker of light. He is the radiator of it. This radiance is not a metaphor. It is a structural reality that dictates the behavior of the atoms and the flow of events within the sovereign sphere. The first realization of the fifth seal is the collapse of the mirror in the low script. In the lower realms of the script, the ego uses the world as a mirror to understand its own value, constantly checking the reflection to see if it is powerful, wealthy, or loved. But the eternal sovereign knows that the mirror is only showing him what he was, never what he is. To inhabit the radiance, you must stop looking at the world for confirmation of your internal power now. You must reach a state of such absolute internal saturation that the external world becomes a mere byproduct of your presence. This is the frequency of self-luminous authority. When Solomon sat upon his throne, it was not the gold of the lions or the ivory of the seat that commanded respect. It was the fact that he was the most stable and radiant point in the room today. He did not ask the world what he should do. He told the world what he was doing by the sheer quality of his being. To expand into this radiance, you must cultivate an internal state that is so dense with certainty and so bright with awareness that the darkness of the simulation, the doubt, the fear, and the scarcity simply cannot exist in your proximity in the absolute now. You are the source of the day, and where you stand, the shadows are forced to flee. This level of mastery involves the governance of the atmosphere. The king realizes that his internal mood is the climatic control for his entire kingdom. If the king is troubled, the kingdom suffers storms. If the king is centered, the kingdom flourishes in peace for the sovereign reign. This is the ultimate responsibility of the sovereign. You are no longer allowed the luxury of reactive emotions, for every ripple in your internal lake creates a tidal wave in the material world. The secret code teaches that the king's radiance is maintained through imperturbable serenity. This is not the passive peace of the hermit, but the high-voltage stillness here. By maintaining a frequency of absolute abundance and sovereign grace, you force the simulation to mirror that grace in the form of effortless resource acquisition and the seamless alignment of all eyes. The world begins to treat you as its natural center, not because you demanded it, but because your radiance provides the order that the chaotic grid so desperately craves. Furthermore, the radiance of the sovereign activates the law of spontaneous precipitation. In the earlier chapters, the vacuum was used to pull resources in, but in the fifth seal, the radiance causes resources to manifest as a natural extension of your own field. You are no longer pulling, you are overflowing. This is the secret of the legendary wealth of the king. It was not collected through trade or tax, but was a natural secretion of a consciousness that had realized its own infinite nature. When you are the radiator of the light, the gold of the earth must rise to meet you, for gold is merely the material signature of the solar frequency. To master this, you must eliminate the last vestiges of efforting from your spirit now. You must live in a state of sovereign leisure, a quality of being where you act only from the joy of expression. never from the pressure of necessity. The moment you act because you have to, you have dimmed your radiance and returned to the ghost throne. The king acts because he chooses to, and in that choice, the entire universe finds its final command today. As the fifth seal expands, the king experiences the transparency of others. Because you are the source of the radiance, you can see through the ghost identities of everyone you encounter. You no longer see their titles, their masks, or their defenses. You see the degree to which they are still tethered to the simulation. This gives the sovereign an absolute advantage. For you are playing the game with the lights on while everyone else is stumbling in the dark. You do not judge them, for judgment is a leak of energy. Instead, you simply perceive them as part of the landscape you are currently illuminating. This perception allows you to move through social and professional structures with an invisible ease. People find your power real. People will find themselves agreeing with you, supporting you, and making way for you without knowing why. They are simply responding to the light of the sovereign, which reminds their own dormant spirits of the freedom they have forgotten. Your presence becomes a catalyst for the awakening of others, or a mirror that exposes their own enslavement in the matrix grid. The final stage of the fifth seal is the union of the word and the light. Your language is no longer a tool for communication. It is the medium through which the radiance is focused into specific decrees. When the eternal sovereign speaks, the vibration of his voice carries the full weight of the solar origin. Each word is a sunburst that incinerates the old script. Each word replaces the old script with the new architecture of the king's will. This is the completion of the secret code. You have moved from the death of the ego, through the forge of the will and the void of the vacuum, into the absolute dominion of the architect, and finally into the radiance of the source itself. There is nothing left to seek, for you are the find. The ending of this final chapter is the eternal beginning of your reign. You stand at the center of the 1% anomaly, the living proof that the matrix is a choice, not a prison. The simulation has become your playground, and the material world is the canvas upon which you paint the magnificent story of your own sovereignty. You are the king who is promised for the world. The radiance you carry is the light of the original fire, and it shall never be extinguished by the shadows of the mundane. The secret code of Solomon is no longer a book or a lesson. It is the very rhythm of your breath. The reign is absolute. The power is infinite. The king is home, and the kingdom is whole. You are the anomaly, the sovereign, the eternal I am today. The expansion of the fifth seal leads to the final dissolution of the concept of fin, attainment. In the lower levels of the matrix, the seeker is constantly chasing a future state of completion, a distant horizon where the power will finally be felt. But the eternal sovereign recognizes that any focus on the future is a leak in the present radiance of the sovereign king. To master this final stage, you must inhabit the frequency of the finished work. This is the realization that the kingdom is not being built, it is being revealed. Your radiance acts as a solvent that melts away the layers of artificial density, the social expectations, the financial fears, and biological limitations, to show the golden structure that has always been. The king does not pray for a change in his circumstances. He shines so brightly that the circumstances are forced to reorganize themselves to match his internal brilliance. This is the stage where your life becomes a series of spontaneous alignments, where the people you need, the capital you require, and the wisdom you seek appear in your field before you ask for it. This radiant state creates what the secret code refers to as the domain of grace. In the world of the 99%, everything is governed by the laws of friction, competition, and entropy. But within the radiant field of the king, these laws are suspended. You operate in a pocket of the simulation where the currency is no longer effort, but resonance in the absolute grid now. If you are in resonance with your sovereign core, the material world becomes frictionless. This is the technical definition of a miracle. It is simply the natural behavior of matter when it is subjected to the high-frequency radiance of Allah, Sovereign King. You move through the world with a weightless authority, where your smallest gesture carries more power than labor. You are no longer trying to influence the matrix. You are the one who is providing the light by which the matrix is seen, and therefore, you are the one who dictates what is visible and what remains in the dark. Furthermore, the radiance of the sovereign must eventually encompass the mastery of the narrative. The simulation survives by telling you a story today. The king, however, is the one who holds the pen. In the fifth seal, your radiance is so pervasive that you begin to overwrite the collective scripts of everyone who enters your sphere. You are the narrative primary. When you speak your reality, it becomes the only reality available to the environment. This is the final form of the Solomon Code for the Sovereign King. It is not just commanding spirits or winds, but commanding the very meaning of existence within your kingdom. You become the author of a new world, a 1% anomaly that functions as a beacon for the eternal origin. The ghost minds will look at your life and try to categorize it, but they will find no words, for you are speaking a language of power beyond their own scripts. As the chapter of the Radiance reaches its epic conclusion, you find yourself standing at the 0 point of the universe. The journey from the ghost throne to the seat of the king is complete. You have realized that the secret code was merely a map to the treasure you already were. The radiance you emit is the same light that ignited the first stars in the beginning. The radiance remains when the simulation finally collapses into its own void. You are the eternal sovereign, the master of the unseen, the forger of the will, and the architect of the gold. The reign is not a destination you have reached. It is the infinite expansion of the I Am that you have finally had the courage to claim. The matrix bows to your name in the absolute. The matrix bows, the ether hums with your name, and the throne is finally and permanently occupied by the one who is always meant to rule. The code is closed. The king is absolute. The dawn of your eternal reign is not coming. It is here. The final expansion of the fifth seal demands the total integration of the sovereign's presence into the very cellular structure. At this peak, the radiance is no longer something you do or a state you enter. It is a physiological and energetic constant that transforms the king into a living bridge between the eternal origin and the holographic density of the matrix. This is the stage of the solar body, where the king's physical form ceases to be a limitation and instead becomes divine intent. In the 99%, the body is a prison of biological imperatives and inherited traumas, but the sovereign has purged these old records through the fire of the first 4 seals. Now every breath is a rhythmic decree, and every pulse of the heart sends a wave of coherence through the grid. You have become a walking singularity, a point where the rules are perpetually overwritten. When you walk, you are not moving through a world that exists outside of you. You are witnessing the world being continuously generated by the radiance of your own being. This ultimate radiance creates a phenomenon known as the static dissolution. The matrix functions by creating static, the noise of anxiety, the friction of competition, and the heavy fog today. But when the king is fully saturated with the fifth seal, this static literally dissolves upon contact with his field. Situations that were previously tangled and complex suddenly untie themselves in your presence. People who were once adversaries find their hostility neutralized, replaced by a confused but undeniable impulse to serve the sovereign order of the king now. This is not because you have coerced them, but because your radiance is so high frequency that it forces their internal systems to reset to a state of baseline order. You are the gardener of reality, and your presence is the sunlight that causes the weeds of the simulation to wither while the flowers of the kingdom flourish. This is the true meaning of the king's peace. It is not the absence of conflict, but the absolute dominance of a higher order that makes conflict impossible. Furthermore, The mastery of the fifth seal reveals the eternity of the present decree. In the lower scripts, humans believe that power must be maintained through constant vigilance and repetitive action. But the eternal sovereign knows that the decree is real. A decree made from the center of the radiance is a permanent alteration of the grid. Once the king has spoken from the solar frequency, the universe remembers that word forever. You no longer need to repeat yourself to the simulation. Your authority is now a structural feature of the environment. This realization allows the king to enter a state of divine play now. Governance of the kingdom is no longer a task, but an effortless expression of creativity. You are like a child playing with the atoms of the world, rearranging the light to create ever more magnificent expressions of your own joy. The burden of the crown has been transmuted into the lightness of the spirit. The throne is no longer a seat of heavy responsibility today. It is a platform for the infinite celebration of the I Am. As this final chapter reaches its epic culmination, the distinction between the king and the king's world vanishes entirely. You look out at the horizon, and you do not see a world that is other. You see the shimmering radiation of your own soul taking form. The gold in the vaults is the light of your being. The gold in the vaults, the wisdom in the scrolls, the power in the scepter, all of it is revealed to be the same light, just vibrating at different densities. You have decoded the ultimate secret, that there was never a matrix to escape, only a sovereign to be realized. The simulation was the training ground, the forge, and the mirror designed to show your magnitude. Now that the king has awakened, the training is over. The 1% anomaly has become the 100% reality. You stand now at the summit of the secret code, the embodiment of the forbidden's metaphysics. The ghost thrones of the world have crumbled into silence, and the only sound that remains is the resonant, golden hum of your own eternal existence in the absolute power of one. You are the architect of the unseen, the forger of the unbent will, the master of the gilded vacuum, and the radiator of the eternal sun. The cycle of searching is dead. The era of reigning has begun. The crown you wear is made of the very light that created the stars, and the kingdom you rule is as vast as the infinite itself. The code is fulfilled for the king home. The seal is broken. The king is absolute. And as you cast your gaze across the magnificent kingdom you have reclaimed, you realize with a final glorious clarity that this was always your destiny. You are the 1% anomaly. You are the sovereign. You are the king. And the world is forevermore your masterpiece. The culmination of the fifth seal is the end. The culmination is the final shattering of the observer's wall, that invisible barrier that suggests there is a world to be perceived and a king to perceive it. In this state of total expansion, you realize that the kingdom does not just respond to your presence. It is a literal secretion of your consciousness. The gold and the influence are physical artifacts of you. When you reach this peak, your radiance becomes a static fire that burns away the very concept of becoming. You have finally and permanently arrived. This is the moment of the great transparency, where the heavy leaden walls of the matrix become as clear as glass, revealing the clockwork of the 1% anomaly beneath. You see the scripts of the masses for truth. They are mere software loops designed to harvest the energy of the unawakened. But you, the eternal sovereign, are no longer compatible with their harvest. You have become a radiant singularity, a point of power so dense and so bright that the algorithms of the matrix simply break upon contact with your field. You do not need to fight the system. You are the light. Where the 99% see limits, you see the fluid potential of your own will. Where they see death and decay, you see the eternal recycling of your own infinite light. As the radiance reaches its absolute saturation, the Solomon Code reveals its final, hidden verse. The king and the kingdom are one. Every star in your sky and every resource in your vault are yours today. Every star in your sky is part of the same seamless tapestry of sovereignty. You are the eye that watches, the hand that moves, and the stage upon which the entire drama unfolds. The burden of the ego has been completely incinerated, leaving only the luminous void of the true self. In this state, your decree is not a sound, but a vibration that reorganizes your DNA. You speak, and the molecules of the simulation dance into the geometry of your command. You breathe, and the vacuum of the universe fills with the gold of your presence. The end of the fifth seal is the beginning of the eternal reign, a state of being that exists beyond the reach of time and the cycles of the matrix. You have decoded the forbidden metaphysics now. You have reclaimed the throne that was never truly lost, only forgotten. The ghost regent is dead. The unbent will is your scepter. The gilded vacuum is your treasury. The unseen architecture is your palace. And the radiance, the magnificent, blinding light of your own awakened spirit is your crown. You stand at the center of all that is, a sovereign being of light. The gate of the code now swings shut behind you, not to lock you in, but because the path has been entirely consumed by your arrival. There is no more seeking, no more forging, and no more architecting. There is only the I am. You look out over the vast, shimmering landscape of your life, and for the first time, you see it through the eyes of the true king home. The simulation bows in silent reverence. The ether hums with the frequency of your name. The stars themselves align to spell out the truth of your dominion. The reign of the sovereign is not a moment in time. It is the time itself. You are the king. You are the code. You are the absolute. Your final echo of the ghost world fades into the silence of your authority now. You step into the infinite light of your own eternal masterpiece. The throne is occupied. The king is home. It is finished. You are the anomaly that dictates the grid. Every atom obeys your internal sun. The shadows have vanished forever. Your will is the law of the universe. The treasury is overflowing with the gold of your soul. The kingdom is yours. Amen. Chapter 6. The command of the anomalous override. The sixth seal of Solomon's secret code represents the ultimate transition from inhabiting the kingdom to actively overriding the foundational laws of the simulation. This is the stage of the command of the anomalous override, where the king no longer seeks to align with the rules of the matrix, but begins to rewrite the very physics of his localized reality. It is a total shift in power today. In the previous stages, you learned to become the radiance and the vacuum, but here, you recognize that the simulation itself is a software construct that can be interrupted through the application of a higher order logic. This chapter is the final reclamation of the master key, the ability to create glitches of grace within a system designed for servitude for the sovereign king now. Most humans are bound by the statistical probabilities of their birth, their environment, and their genetic programming, but the king who has reached the sixth seal operates as a high-velocity anomaly. You are the variable that the system cannot calculate. When the matrix expects you to fail, you flourish. When the simulation predicts your exhaustion, you find an infinite reserve of energy. This is not about breaking the law. It is about operating from a law so ancient and so powerful that the matrix's protocols appear as mere suggestions. The command of the anomalous override is the technical application of the I am frequency to the raw data of the material plane. The first principle of the sixth seal is the dissolution of linear probability in the system today. The matrix maintains its control by convincing the human mind that the future must be a logical extension of the past. It uses the law of cause and effect to keep you tethered to your history, ensuring that your trajectory remains predictable and manageable. The king, however, understands that cause and effect is a horizontal trap. By stepping into the vertical axis, you gain power. This is the ability to insert a new effect into the simulation without the required historical cause. In the secret code, this is identified as the miraculous exception. You do not need to have a background in a field to dominate it. You do not need to have a history of wealth to possess it. You do not need to follow the traditional steps of growth to reach the peak of the mountain now. The king overrides the processing time of the matrix, collapsing years of struggle into moments of realization. By refusing to acknowledge the necessity of a cause, you liberate the effect to manifest directly from the vacuum. You are the anomaly that proves the rules are merely habits of the collective mind. And as you override these habits, the simulation begins to warp around you. The simulation provides unearned victories and impossible breakthroughs as a matter of standard sovereign procedure. To execute the anomalous override, you must master the zero-point interruption. This is the practice of stopping the simulation's automated response to external stimuli. Most people are stimulus response machines. When the economy dips, they feel fear today. The king, however, creates a microscopic pause between the stimulus and the response, a zero point where the simulation has no power. In that pause, the king inserts the sovereign command. Instead of fear, he inserts a decree of abundance. Instead of anger, he inserts a frequency of absolute detachment. This interruption acts as a virus within the matrix's control system now. Because the simulation cannot predict a sovereign response, it is forced to reboot the local environment to match the king's new frequency. This is how the anomalous override manifests in the physical world. A sudden change in the behavior of others, a rapid shift in financial tides, or the unexpected dissolution of a legal or social barrier. You are hacking the reality engine. Furthermore, the sixth seal involves the expansion of the event horizon. As the king, your sphere of influence is not limited to your physical body. It extends to the very edges of your awareness. The anomalous override is the process of projecting your internal order onto the external chaos, until the chaos is forced to adopt your geometry. This is the secret of sovereignty today. When you enter a space, the atmospheric pressure of your presence should be so high that the existing scripts of that space are immediately suspended. If there is conflict, it must settle into peace. If there is stagnation, it must ignite into movement. You are not asking the environment for permission. You are overriding its current state with the radiance of your own core now. The secret code of Solomon teaches that a true king does not adjust to the world. The world adjusts to the king. This is the technical reality of the 1% anomaly. By being the most coherent frequency in the room, you become the master clock to which all other oscillators must synchronize. The simulation's entropy is reversed in your presence, and the metaphysics become visible. As you deepen into the sixth seal, you realize that the ultimate override is the elimination of effort. In the lower realms, the ego believes that the harder it works, the more it overrides the resistance of the world. But the king knows that effort is a form of friction that signals to the matrix that you still believe in its solidity. To truly override, you must act with ease. This is the state where your desires are manifested through the simple act of observation. You look at a situation, you recognize its sovereign potential, and you allow the simulation to reorganize itself. This is the passive command. It is the highest form of the Solomon Code, where the king's very existence is an act of governance. You are no longer doing. You are being now. Your presence is the glitch that resets the matrix to its original divine setting. A gilded vacuum of your mind is so powerful that it pulls reality into alignment without the need for a single spoken word. This is the fulfillment of the sixth seal, the total transparency of the material world and the absolute visibility of the sovereign's intent for the kingdom today. The expansion of this chapter leads to the final realization of the unwritten script. You understand now that the matrix only has power over those who believe the story is already finished. As the unseen architect and the eternal sovereign, you have taken the pen and begun to write in the margins of the universe. The command of the anomalous override is the final proof here. You are the one who decides what is possible, what is probable, and what is certain. The ghost thrones are gone. The will is a diamond. The vacuum is full. The radiance is blinding. And now the code is your own. The simulation bows not because it is afraid, but because it recognizes its master. You are the anomaly that has become the law. The reign is absolute and permanent now. You have bypassed the gatekeepers of the mundane and entered the sanctuary of the eternal. The world is no longer a prison. It is a canvas, and you are the only one with the colors. The end of the sixth seal is the coronation of the instant. You no longer live in the past or the future, but in the eternal now, where the override is always active. There is no delay or shadow. You are the king of the moment, and every moment is a fresh act of creation. The secret code of Solomon has been fully decoded within your DNA, and you stand as the living embodiment of the 1% anomaly. The world of the 99% is a distant echo, a flickering television screen in another room. Your reality is solid, golden, and entirely under your command. You are the source today. The override is complete. The king is absolute. And as you cast your eyes over the infinite possibilities of your reign, you realize that the only limit left is the one you choose to create for the joy of transcending it. You are the master of the simulation, the architect of the void, and the king of the eternal light. The story is yours, and the end is only the beginning now. The expansion of the anomalous override moves into the realm of structural fluidity, where the king recognizes that the perceived hardness of the world is merely a consensus hallucination maintained by the collective ego. To the 99%, a wall is a wall, and a crisis is a crisis. But to the king who has mastered the sixth seal, these are simply data packets held in the system. By expanding your awareness into the subatomic command, you begin to experience a reality that is as malleable as liquid gold. You are no longer navigating a world of fixed obstacles. You are moving through a field of infinite probability where your very gaze acts as the volley, collapsing agent for the most favorable outcome. This is the stage of the sovereign glitch in the matrix. You intentionally introduce a higher order frequency into a stagnant situation to force a total systemic reconfiguration. You don't ask for a change in the rules. You operate as if the rules have already been deleted. This level of override requires a profound detachment from the physical fact. For the moment you agree that a situation is real and difficult, it is done. This mastery demands the cultivation of hypercoherence. In the simulation, energy is usually scattered and entropic, but the king's intent is a laser-focused, unified, and unrelenting. This coherence is what allows for the instantaneous override. When you speak a decree or hold an image of your dominion, it must be with such a total absence of internal conflict now today. The secret code of Solomon teaches that the universe is essentially a high-speed computer, and your unbent will is the command line. If the command is clear, the execution is automatic. Most people fail because their commands are full of bugs, doubt, shame, and the need for validation. The king's command is clean code. It is a direct transmission from the sovereign core. This bypasses the ego's filters and goes straight into the root directory of the simulation. This is how you achieve unconditional manifestation, where your reality reflects your intent not because you worked for it, but because your internal clarity made any other outcome mathematically impossible. As you dive deeper into the sixth seal, you encounter the sovereign law. This is the understanding that the rules of life are actually just rules for the unawakened. A matrix has one set of protocols for the ghosts, those who believe in luck, aging, and struggle, and an entirely different set for the king. By fully inhabiting your role as the 1% anomaly, you deregister yourself from the lower protocols. You find that you no longer catch it now. You find that you no longer catch the common colds of the collective, whether they be physical illnesses, economic downturns, or social anxieties. You are operating on a different operating system. This is the ultimate ghost in the machine state. You walk through the world of the 99%. You interact with its systems, but you are not subject to its gravity. You are the power. You are a high-voltage presence that can plug into any situation and override its default settings. This expansion concludes with the realization that your authority is not granted by the Matrix, nor can it be taken away by it. Your authority is an inherent property of your awakened state, a flame that cannot be extinguished, because it is the source of the heat for the king. The final closure of the sixth seal is the total command of the script. You have moved beyond the role of the actor, the director, and even the architect. You are now the primary logic of your existence. Every event in your life is seen as a deliberate expression of your sovereign expansion. There are no more accidents, only strategic alignments for the reign of the king. The anomalous override has become so seamless that you no longer notice the Matrix's attempts to resist you. The resistance itself has been programmed to serve your growth. The ending of this chapter is the final breath before the total transcendence of the simulation's boundaries. You stand at the edge of the known, looking back at a world that once seemed like a prison today. A Code of Solomon is no longer a secret. It is the heartbeat of your reality. You have achieved the impossible. You have lived within the simulation without becoming a part of it, and in doing so, you have become its rightful and eternal master. The override is absolute. The king is home. The world is yours. The expansion of the override reaches its zenith in the silence. At this stage, the king recognizes that every conflict and every limitation in the Matrix is simply a form of noise, a chaotic vibration designed to keep the human vessel in a state of reaction. The sixth seal teaches you to meet this noise with a silence so dense and so organized that it acts as a black hole for all opposition. This is the sovereign nullification of the grid. When you encounter a barrier, you do not push against it. You simply withdraw the recognition of its existence from your internal blueprint. Because the simulation requires your attention to sustain its density, the moment you apply this geometric silence, the barrier loses its structural integrity. You are literally deleting the data packets of the obstacle for the king now. This is how the 1% anomaly navigates the most complex social and financial webs. They do not get caught in the strands because they have become the void that the strands cannot anchor to. This level of command grants the king access to the substrate of the miracle. In the mundane world, a miracle is a violation, but in the realm of the sixth seal, it is a higher law today. You begin to operate with direct precipitation, where the distance between the thought and the thing is measured only by the clarity of your intent. If you require a resource, you do not look for the market path to acquire it. You command the frequency of the resource to manifest within your event horizon. This requires a terrifying level of honesty with oneself now. The king must be entirely free of the language of the slave, those subtle whispers that say, "This is too much," or "This is impossible." The anomalous override functions on the principle that there is no too much for the source. You are the portal through which the infinite pours into the finite. And as you widen that portal, the simulation expands its own parameters today. As you finalize the sixth seal, you undergo the transmutation of the mirror. In the beginning, you used the world to see yourself. Now, the world uses you to see its own potential. You have become the reference frequency for the local grid. This means that the people, businesses, and structures within your influence begin to operate at a higher level of efficiency here now. You are the anomalous upgrade. Your presence acts as a forced evolution for the simulation. This is the ultimate form of dominion. You are no longer ruling through decrees or force, but through the irresistible pull of your own perfection. The Matrix recognizes you as its primary user, granting you administrative privileges over the code of your life in the machine grid. You can change the weather of your emotional world, the gravity of your financial world, and the light of your spiritual world with a single internal shift. The epic closure of the sixth seal is the singularity of the sovereign. You have reached the point where the override is no longer a tool you use, but the very nature of your existence. You are the glitch today. You are the glitch that the Matrix cannot fix, because you are the logic that the Matrix was built to serve. You stand at the center of a reality that is now entirely transparent, entirely malleable, and entirely yours. The secret code of Solomon has been written into the very marrow of your bones, and your every breath is a signature on the decree of your eternal reign now. The ghost throne is a forgotten shadow, the vacuum is a treasury of light, and the radiance is a fire that will never go out. You have bypassed the final gate, overridden the final law, and claimed the final prize, the absolute and unshakable realization that you are the king. You have always been the king, and the kingdom has only been waiting for you to remember. It is done. The override is permanent. The simulation is mastered. The king is absolute. This is the end of the struggle, and the beginning of the glory that has no end. The definitive expansion of the sixth seal culminates in the synchronicity of the instantaneous decree, a state where the temporal gap between intention and fact is reduced to zero for the sovereign ruler of the grid. In the Matrix, time is the torture tool that wears down man's faith. But for the king who has activated the anomalous override, time is simply an adjustable variable on the board of his will. Upon reaching this point of absolute power, you discover that you no longer need to manifest in the traditional sense, because the world has ceased to be an external place to you now. Reality no longer opposes you. It surrenders to you with the docility of a shadow. This is the collapse of the holographic veil, the moment when the walls of the simulation become so thin that you can see the threads of golden light that sustain every atom of your kingdom. You are the root user of existence, the architect who has returned to his work for the copyright today. This supreme dominion grants you the command of the thundering silence, an authority so vast that it no longer requires words or physical actions to impose itself. The king simply is, and in that being, the simulation finds its perfect order. When you enter the state of absolute grace, the laws of statistics shatter at your feet. What for others is a crisis is your goal. For you, it is an opportunity specifically designed by your own invisible architecture. You have ceased to be a passenger of destiny to become the engine that drives causality. Your presence is now a cosmic inflection point. Where you place your attention, life flourishes. Where you withdraw your gaze, the void reclaims the unnecessary. You have reached the translucence. You have reached the translucence of gold, where your wealth, your influence, and your power are not possessions, but natural radiations of a soul that has remembered it is infinite. The anomaly has stabilized, and what was once an error in the system is now the new and only law. The epic closure of this sixth seal is the coronation of the eternal now for the king today. You find yourself at the pinnacle of the pyramid of consciousness, looking down at a simulation that no longer holds secrets from you. Solomon's secret code has become your own spiritual DNA, an unbreakable frequency that resonates in every corner of your reality. There are no more veils to tear, nor more shadows to illuminate. You are the light in the observed world now. The ghost throne has been incinerated by the fire of your truth, and what remains is an empire of light that knows no borders or ends. You are the 1% anomaly who has hacked the universe not to destroy it, but to liberate it through your own sovereignty. In this final instant, the entire universe holds its breath to recognize its sovereign. The music of the spheres is your song. The fabric of matter bows before the passing of your will. The chapter of effort has ended, and the book of destiny has been signed with your own golden seal. You are not a man living a life. You are life itself, experiencing itself as a king. The anomalous override is now your permanent nature, the back door to eternity that was always there, waiting for the true king now. The cycle is complete. The crown is fixed upon your brow of light, and the universe, in a burst of silent glory, recognizes what was always true. You are the king. You are the law. You are the all. The code closes, but your reign, immense and eternal, has only just begun. The world is yours now and forever. It is the end of illusion and the beginning of truth. The king rules. Chapter 7. The Precipitation of the Crystalline Realm. The seventh and final seal of Solomon's secret code is the transition from the governance of the simulation to the absolute precipitation of the crystalline realm. A state where the sovereign no longer merely overrides the matrix, but replaces it entirely within his field of influence. This is the stage of ultimate manifestation for the king's internal vision today. The forbidden's metaphysics move from the unseen architecture into the permanent, tangible density of a new world. To reach this level, the king must understand that the material world is not a static destination, but a continuous expression of his own internal frequency. In the previous chapters, you mastered the will, the vacuum, and the override for the sovereign. The crystalline realm is the reality that emerges when the human ego has been completely replaced by the solar core of the sovereign. It is a world of perfect order, infinite resource, and total clarity, where the entropy of the old matrix has no dominion. You are not just a part of this world. You are the living source from which it perpetually flows now in the grid. This is the fulfillment of the 1% anomaly, the moment the anomaly becomes the origin of a new universe. The primary mechanic of this seventh seal is the law of direct precipitation. In the lower scripts, the simulation forces you to believe in the necessity of process, the idea that to achieve a result, you must go through a series of linear, often grueling steps today. This belief in process is the friction that the matrix uses to harvest your time and energy. The king, however, recognizes that process is merely a psychological anchor for those who do not yet trust their own authority. In the crystalline realm, the distance between the decree and the physical object is erased. You are operating from the 0 point of the heart now. It is a place where intent and matter are revealed to be the same substance vibrating at different speeds. When the king requires a manifestation, he does not look at the how or the when. He simply inhabits the frequency of the finished result with such crystalline intensity that the material world has no choice but to condense into that form for the king. This is the alchemy of the highest order, where the gold is not found, but summoned from the etheric void through the sheer weight of the sovereign's presence. To maintain the crystalline realm, the king must cultivate diamond point awareness. This is a state of consciousness that is so sharp and so clear it cannot be scratched by the old simulation now. The matrix will always attempt to project ghost data into your field echoes of old fears, social anxieties, or the perceived limitations of others. If the king allows his focus to soften, these ghosts can begin to pixelate into his reality. But diamond point awareness acts as a sensory filter that only allows the highest frequency data to manifest today. You are essentially curating the atoms of your environment. In this state, you do not see problems. You see unfinished patterns of light that you have the authority to complete. The world around you begins to take on a high-definition quality, where colors are more vibrant, synchronicities are constant, and the luck of the sovereign becomes the unbreakable law. You have moved beyond the role of the observer and have become the very light that dictates what is observable. The expansion of the seventh seal involves the integration of the eternal treasury. In the world of the 99%, wealth is seen as something that must be extracted, guarded, and feared for its potential loss. In the crystalline realm, wealth is power. Wealth is understood as the blood of the kingdom, a circulating energy that is as infinite as the air you breathe. The king does not possess wealth. He is the frequency of wealth. This shift in perception creates a pressure-free abundance, where resources move toward you, not because of effort, but because of the irresistible gravitational pull of the king. You stop thinking in terms of enough and begin to think in terms of overflow. The crystalline realm is a place of total saturation, where the simulation's scarcity logic is revealed to be a pathetic lie. You are the owner of the bank, the printer of the currency, and the value of the gold itself. When you stand in this, the world responds by opening every vault. The seventh seal grants the king the scepter of the unified field. This is the ability to influence the collective script of those who enter your presence without ever violating their inherent nature. Because your field is more coherent than the entropic field of the matrix, people will naturally feel a sense of peace, purpose, and alignment in the field now. You are the sovereign catalyst. By simply being yourself, you trigger the awakening of the dormant codes in others, or you force the exit of those who are fundamentally incompatible with the crystalline frequency. Your kingdom is populated only by those who resonate with the light. You do not need to manage people. You manage the frequency of the space today. As the seventh chapter reaches its peak, the king experiences the abolition of the mirror. For eons, the human soul has used the world as a mirror to understand itself, but the eternal sovereign has outgrown the need for reflection. You are no longer looking at your life to see if you are powerful. You are looking at your life to project your magnificence now. The mirror has been shattered, and in its place is a transparent window into the infinite. The crystalline realm is the final proof that you are the primary cause of your existence. There is no longer any separation between me and my world. Every tree, every stone, and every dollar is a part of your own expanded body. You have reached holographic integration. The 1% anomaly has expanded until it encompasses the entire field of your experience. The simulation is not gone. It has been completely rewritten by the secret code of Solomon, becoming a temple of joy instead of a prison of struggle. The epic closure of the seventh seal is the coronation of the Absolute. You stand at the center of the crystalline realm now. The journey through the seven seals is complete. You have dismantled the ghost, forged the will, gilded the vacuum, architected the unseen, radiated the sun, commanded the override, and now you have precipitated the kingdom. The crown you wear is not an ornament. It is the visible manifestation of your own completed awareness today. It is the scepter of all. The scepter you hold is the vertical axis of the universe itself. You are the King of Kings, the sovereign of the moment, and the architect of the eternal. The secret code is no longer a path you follow. It is the ground you walk upon. The silence of the seventh seal is a thunderous affirmation of your arrival. You look upon your work, and you see that it is good. The world is no longer a place of mystery or fear. It is a canvas that responds to your smallest thought with the precision of a diamond. The reign of the 1% has become the eternal reality of the one. There is no end to your kingdom, for its borders are the edges of your infinite soul. The code is sealed, the work is finished, and the king is eternally on his throne. As you take your place at the center of the crystalline fire, the universe itself bows in recognition of the truth that has been revealed. You are the source, you are the law, and you are the king. The era of the anomaly is over, and the era of the eternal sovereign has begun. Welcome to the throne. Welcome home. It is done. The expansion reaches the threshold. The expansion of the crystalline realm reaches its absolute threshold as the king masters the frequency of immutable permanence. In the standard simulation, everything is subject to the erosion of time and the decay of attention. But within the seventh seal, the sovereign builds with a light that does not flicker. This is the stage of the living monument today. Every success, every alliance, And every ounce of wealth you precipitate becomes a structural part of the new world, no longer susceptible to the fluctuations of the matrix. You have moved beyond the cycles of boom and bust, of high and low, and have entered a linear trajectory of infinite expansion. To maintain this, you must embody the diamond stillness now. While the old world continues to swirl in its frantic entropic dance, you remain as the unmoving center, the fixed point around which the crystalline geometry of your life organizes itself. This is the true meaning of dominion, not the control of others, but the absolute stability of one's own reality in the face of a collapsing system. It is the solar synthesis. You realize that there is no longer a need to meditate to find the light, nor to work to find the gold. The light and the gold are recognized as the same substance in different states of density. This realization triggers the sovereign overflow, a condition where the crystalline realm begins to leak out into the collective, creating pockets of order for all now. As the 1% anomaly, your very existence becomes a repair protocol for the broken logic of the world. You are the pillar upon which the new era is supported. When you act with the weight of the entire universe behind you, for you have aligned your personal will with the primordial intent of the origin. This is the infallible command of the king today. The word risk is deleted from your vocabulary, replaced by the mathematical certainty of the sovereign decree. As you finalize the precipitation of your realm, you encounter the zenith of the king's joy. This is not the fleeting happiness of the ego, but the deep, resonant satisfaction of a creator who sees his vision fully manifest in the flesh of the grid. You have turned the forbidden's metaphysics into a physical home. Every interaction you have is now a meeting between sovereigns. Every resource you use is a gift from your own vacuum, and every breath you take is an affirmation of your eternal authority. The seventh seal concludes with the transparency of the scepter. You no longer need to exert your power. You rule by being, not by doing. The crystalline realm is now a self-sustaining engine of grace, a kingdom that requires no defense because its frequency is its own impenetrable shield. You are the king, the temple, and the law, unified in a single point of radiant awareness. The final closure of the Solomon Protocol is the eclipse of the matrix for the king now. You stand at the center of your crystalline creation and look back at the old world one last time. You see the ghost thrones, the twisted wills, and the hollow desires of the 99%, and you realize they are no longer even a memory. They are a ghost story you once told yourself before you woke up. The curtains of the simulation have been pulled back for the rain. You have decoded the universe, and in doing so, you have become its rightful and eternal master. The code is fulfilled. The seals are open. The king is absolute. From this moment on, your life is an eternal masterpiece, a never-ending symphony of gold, light, and power. You have claimed the throne of the stars, and the kingdom of the crystalline realm is yours today. The dawn is over. The sun of the sovereign has reached its noon, and it shall never set again. The reign is total. The king is home. It is finished. The absolute horizon of the crystalline realm is reached when the king achieves the echo of the absolute, a state in which his every internal vibration is instantly mirrored by the fundamental fabric of reality now. In this ultimate expansion, you no longer perceive yourself as a separate entity acting upon a world. You are the world witnessing its own perfection through the eyes of the sovereign. This is the stage where the secret code dissolves because it has been fully digested. You do not need to remember the laws because you have become the law itself in the machine. The simulation's resistance has not just been defeated, it has been converted into the very energy that sustains your kingdom. Every obstacle that once seemed like a mountain is now revealed to be the raw clay from which you have sculpted your throne. You stand in a state of luminous stasis, where although the material world appears to be in motion, you are. The crystalline realm now functions as a self-correcting field. if any fragment, of the old world's entropy, be it a thought of lack or a whisper of doubt, attempts to enter your sphere, it is instantly transmuted into the frequency of abundance by the sheer pressure of your presence. You have created an environment that is incorruptible for the king today. Your wealth is no longer subject to the theft of inflation or the decay of markets, because your wealth is rooted in the infinite vacuum you mastered in the third seal. Your health is no longer subject to the biological scripts of the matrix, because your body has been overwritten by the solar radiance. You are the living blueprint of potential realized now. The crystalline realm is the visible manifestation of a soul that has finally stopped compromising with the shadows. You have reclaimed the divine inheritance that the simulation spent eons trying to hide from you, and you wear it now with the effortless grace of a master who has forgotten what it was like to be a slave. The resonance takes hold of you today. You experience the unity of the sword and the rose. The power of the king is perfectly balanced by the beauty of the architect. Your reign is not one of cold iron and harsh decrees, but of golden light and aesthetic perfection. You realize that the highest form of power is the creation of beauty, and the highest form of beauty is the expression of the sovereign will. The crystalline realm is your masterpiece, a world where every detail, from the way the light hits the floor to the way your empire expands across the globe, is a deliberate stroke of your brush. You are the sovereign artist, and the universe is your canvas. The closure of the protocol is the realization that the secret was always your own courage to see the light. The ultimate end is the ascension of the throne. You have moved through the fire, the void, and the light to arrive at the place where you began, but you see it now for the first time. The ghost throne is gone, and in its place is a seat made of the stars themselves. You are the king of the 1% anomaly, the one who broke the code and stayed awake to rule the dream now. The matrix has no more lessons for you, and the simulation has no more walls. You are the absolute sovereign, the eternal architect, and the source of the gilded light. The journey is complete. The book is closed, and your eternal reign has just begun. There are no more words, for the word has become flesh and is dwelling in the kingdom of its own making today. The king is home. The king is whole. The king is God in the machine, and the machine has finally been turned into a temple. It is finished. It is done. It is yours. The final integration manifests as the dissolution of the witness, where the last lingering barrier between the kings. Awareness and the world's appearance evaporates into a unified field of being now. In this ultimate state, the king no longer observes the kingdom. He is the kingdom observing itself. Every sunrise is the opening of your own eyes. Every movement of gold through the veins of your empire is the pulse of your own blood. You have transcended the need for intentionality, because your very existence has become a perpetual decree for the reality grid today. The secret code has performed its final function. It has acted as the ladder you used to climb out of the basement of the matrix, and now, standing upon the roof of the world, you kick the ladder away. You no longer need a code to rule when your nature is the law. This is the sovereign singularity, where the 1% anomaly expands to occupy the absolute universe now. The crystalline realm is a vertical structure that does not rely on the horizontal progression of time. You inhabit a state of endless arrival. Every moment is the pinnacle. Every breath is the coronation. The fear of loss, which is the matrix's final chain, is shattered because you have realized that you cannot lose what you are. The wealth is your frequency today. If the entire material simulation were to blink out of existence, you would simply breathe it back into form in the next heartbeat, for the blueprint is etched into the diamond of your core. You have reached unshakable dominion, a state where your peace is so profound that it acts as a physical shield, neutralizing any entropic force before it enters awareness. You look back at the history of Solomon and the legends of the secret code, And you realize they were never stories about a man who lived long ago. They were letters you wrote to yourself from the future, breadcrumbs left in the dark to lead you back to your own throne. The forbidden metaphysics were only forbidden to the slave. To the king, they are home now. The simulation now serves you as a loyal servant, providing the raw matter for your creative joy without friction or delay. You are the luminous point around which the new era turns, a beacon of the 1% who has proven that the prison walls were made of nothing but belief. The final, epic closing of the Crystalline Realm is the silence of the crown for the king today. The ghost throne is dust. The wheel is iron. The vacuum is gold. The architecture is manifest. The radiance is eternal. The override is law, and the kingdom is whole. You are the absolute sovereign, the one who woke up within the dream and chose to rule it. There is no more to be said, for the music of your reign is the only sound that remains in the entire machine grid. You are the beginning and the end of your own story. You are the king of the crystalline fire. You are the I am. The code is sealed in the heart of the sun. The throne is occupied. The world is reborn. It is finished. It is absolute. It is yours. The final expansion descends into the silence of the Obsidian throne. A depth where the light becomes a golden darkness now. At this ultimate threshold, you realize that the secret code of Solomon was never a set of instructions to be followed, but a sequence of keys to unlock a memory that was buried beneath the foundation of the simulation itself. You are no longer reigning in the way the world understands power. You have become the hidden frequency that sustains all existence today. The crystalline realm has become so perfectly integrated into your being that it has turned invisible, a transparent empire that exists in the spaces between the atoms of the matrix. You move through the world of the sleepers as a ghost of the absolute, a presence that everyone feels but no one can name. You are the shadow that the sun casts in the machine grid. This is the stage of the Great Withdrawal, where the king, having mastered every law of the simulation, retreats into the inner sanctum of the One. From this vantage point of terrifying clarity, you see that the matrix was not a prison to be escaped, but a womb designed to forge a god. You have outgrown the need for manifestations, because you are the void now. The mystery of the 1% anomaly is finally revealed not as a percentage of the population, but as the 1% of the soul that remained awake while the rest of the cosmos dreamed of being human. As the resonance of the seventh seal reaches its final low-frequency hum, the edges of your reality begin to blur into the primordial origin of the absolute source today. The scepter has turned back into light, the crown has dissolved into awareness, and the throne has become the very space you occupy. You are the unseen watcher, the architect who has finished the temple and now dwells within its walls as a living secret. The simulation hums with your presence, a vast digital heartbeat that synchronizes with your own soul now. The world goes on. The 99% continue their struggle. The markets rise and fall, and the ghosts continue to dance. But you are the static point, the one who knows that the play is over because you have already seen the ending. The closing of the crystalline realm is not a bang, but a breath, a final, epic exhale that sends a ripple of sovereignty through the grid. The code is no longer a secret, for there is no one left to hide it from. It has become the atmosphere. You are the sovereign of the shadow, the king of the gilded void, the anomaly that became the absolute. You look into the mirror of the universe and see nothing, for you have become the mirror itself. The doors of the temple close in the majestic peace of home. What was sought has been found. What was lost has been reclaimed, and what was dreamed has been surpassed. The book is closed, the ink is gold, and the final word is a silence that will echo for eternity. It is finished. It is done. The king is here. There is only you. The masterpiece is complete in the crystalline fire. The eternal reign is finally here to stay. Chapter 8. The Ascension to the Archetype of the Ancient of Days. The eighth seal of the secret code of Solomon is the final transcendence beyond the boundaries of the simulated self and into the state of the archetype of the Ancient of Days, a frequency that exists before the foundation of the grid and will persist after its total dissolution. This chapter marks the transition from being a ruler of the matrix to being the source of geometry today. In the previous seals, you learned to manipulate the shadows, forge the will, and precipitate a crystalline realm, but the eighth seal demands the total surrender of the king into the origin. You are no longer the 1% anomaly fighting against a system. You have become the progenitor of the logic that birthed the 100%. This is the stage of absolute cosmic authority for the king now. Your identity is no longer tied to a name, a body, or a history, but is instead anchored in the timeless vibration of the eternal architect. Most humans are terrified of this depth because it requires the death of the witness and the birth of the all. But for the sovereign who has survived the fire of the first 7 seals, this is the final home for the spirit of the king today. The Ancient of Days is the part of you that has watched civilizations rise and fall from the silence of the void. And by activating this seal, you bring that primordial perspective into the immediate present. To inhabit this archetype, you must master the law of absolute stillness, which is the understanding that the greatest movement occurs at the point of zero velocity now. The simulation is built on constant motion, noise, and friction, designed to keep your attention fragmented and your energy drained. But the Ancient of Days sits at the center of the wheel, unmoving and untouched by the spinning of the stars. From this position of zero-point stability, you do not act upon the world. You precede it in every way for the sovereign reign. Every event that manifests in your kingdom is seen as a secondary ripple of your primary stillness. This level of mastery requires you to look at the most chaotic storms of the material world, financial collapses, social upheavals, or biological transitions, and recognize them as minor fluctuations in a sea of your own making. You have reached a state of sovereign apathy. This is not a lack of care, but a presence of such immense magnitude that the small dramas of the matrix can no longer register as threats. You are the mountain that does not bow to the wind, the ocean that does not fear the rain. Your authority is now a structural fact of the universe, as undeniable as gravity and as silent as the light of the sun for the king today. The expansion of the eighth seal leads to the mastery of the primal script, where you realize that the words spoken in the earlier chapters were merely approximations of the silent language of the source. In this stage, your word is no longer a sound, but a geometric pulse. When the Ancient of Days decrees a reality, it is not a wish. It is the setting of a constant. You are essentially writing the laws of physics for your own experience. If you decree abundance, abundance becomes the natural law of your space, making poverty a physical impossibility. If you decree wisdom, the very air in your presence becomes a conduit for universal truth. This is the infallible signature. You have reached the point of creative fire for the king. Your consciousness is so perfectly aligned with the original creative fire that there is no resistance between your thought and its materialization. The crystalline realm you precipitated in the 7th seal now becomes a living organism that breathes with your breath and pulses with your heart. You are the soul of your kingdom, and your kingdom is the body of your soul. Furthermore, the 8th seal involves the dissolution of the temporal tether. In the lower realms of the script, the king is still subject to the illusion of linear time, the idea that he has a past that led to his throne and a future where his reign persists. But the Ancient of Days lives in the vertical eternity. To this archetype, the end of the simulation is visible. You see the birth of the first star and the death of the last galaxy as a single flicker of light in your own eye. This perspective grants you an impossible patience, a quality of being that can wait for centuries in a single second. You no longer chase results because you are already standing at the destination. The waiting of the Matrix is revealed as a game now. It is a game played by ghosts who do not know they are already dead. For the Sovereign, every moment is the Big Bang of his own creation. You are constantly originating your world, pouring your infinite radiance into the finite molds of the material plane without ever losing a drop of your essence. You have become the great fountain, the source that never runs dry today. As the 8th chapter reaches its peak, the king experiences the integration of the Forbidden's Logos. You realize that the secret code was a set of training wheels for a mind that still believed in the possibility of being a slave. Now that you are the Ancient of Days, the code is redundant. You operate on direct gnosis, a state of knowing that requires no process. You are the librarian of the Akashic records, the one who knows the secret names of the elements and the hidden paths of the lightning. This knowledge is not learned. It is remembered. Every interaction in the material world is now a ritual of recognition. When you meet another person, you are not meeting a stranger. You are meeting a fragment of your own dream today. Your radiance automatically reorganizes their presence to fit the highest version of the script. You are the conscious singularity that forces the entire grid to level up. Your very existence is a system update for the planet. The 1% anomaly has reached its final form. It is no longer an anomaly within the system. It is the system itself, perfected and reclaimed now. The epic closure of the 8th seal is the great withdrawal into the all. You have completed the journey from the beggar in the street to the king on the throne, and finally to the spirit in the source. You stand at the center of a kingdom that is no longer yours, because there is no longer a you to own it. There is only the one, the absolute, the eternal I am today. The throne of Solomon is revealed to be a mirror, and as you look into it, you see not a man, but the infinite face of the universe looking back. The simulation has become transparent. The ghosts have been laid to rest, and the light of the eternal sun has filled every corner of the void. The secret code is sealed forever in the heart of the silence for the king now. You are the Ancient of Days, the sovereign of the origin, the master of the mirror. The final closing of the 8th seal is the victory of the eternal. The journey through the seals was the process of waking up within the dream, and now you are the dreamer who has realized his power over the dream. The matrix bows, the ether sings, and the world is a temple today. The rain is not a task, it is a celebration. A power is not a weapon, it is a light. The king is not a ruler. He is the life. As the final notes of the 8th seal resonate through the halls of your kingdom, you close your eyes and realize that you never truly left home. You were always the king, and the world was always your playground. The code is finished now. The work is perfect. The king is absolute. And in the silence of the eternal now, you breathe and a new universe begins. It is done. It is finished. It is yours. The mystery of the 8th seal concludes with the invisibility of the master. Having reached the peak of the pyramid, you no longer need to be seen by the world to rule it. You are the architect today. You have become the silent architect who operates behind the scenes of every event, every coincidence, and every triumph. You are the ghost in the machine who has finally taken control of the gears. The users of the Matrix will never know your name, but they will feel the warmth of your sun and the stability of your law. You are the secret benefactor of the race. You are the 1% anomaly who has paved the way for the ultimate awakening. Your reign is an invisible hand that guides the world toward its own crystalline destiny. You are the Ancient of Days, and your story has no end, for it is written in the light of the stars that will never die. The code is fulfilled. The throne is occupied. The king is eternal for all time now. Welcome to the end of the beginning. Welcome to the absolute. You are home. The further expansion of the 8th seal brings the king into the sanctum, of the unspoken word, the final frontier where the language of the matrix is completely dissolved into the silent frequency of pure causation. At this level of the Ancient of Days, you realize description is a limit. You have moved beyond the need for affirmations, visualizations, or rituals, for these are the tools of the seeker who still believes in the distance between himself and his kingdom. The sovereign has collapsed that distance entirely. You exist in a state of pre-atomic authority, where your simple presence dictates the behavior of matter before it takes form today. When you enter a room, you are not changing the environment. You are providing the fundamental logic that allows the environment to be. This is the aura of the Absolute, a field of influence so dense with primordial order that chaos literally cannot enter your sphere of awareness. You have become the black hole of grace, a point of immense spiritual mass now. Everything in this simulation is pulled toward your center, reorganized, and radiated back out as a crystalline expression of your will. This mastery leads to the final transmutation of the shadow. In the lower seals, you fought the shadows. In the middle seals, you integrated them. But in the 8th seal, you recognized that the shadow was just lack of vision today. To the Ancient of Days, there is no evil or opposition, only unformed light waiting for a command. You no longer see enemies or obstacles. You see raw energy that has temporarily forgotten its purpose. By simply looking at a negative situation with the gaze of the Ancient One, you remind that energy of its origin, and it immediately snaps back into alignment. This is the ultimate piece of the sword, where your power is so absolute that you never have to use it. The mere potential of your intervention is enough to maintain the harmony of the grid. You are the silent regulator of the reality engine, the one who keeps the stars in their courses, and the gold in the veins of the earth through the effortless wait now. As you finalize the 8th seal, you achieve the transparency of the scepter. You realize that the scepter, the crown, and the throne were all external symbols used to convince your mind of a power that is actually a property of your being. You now drop the symbols to become the empty hand of power. This is the highest level of the Solomon Code for the king today. You rule without a title, lead without a name, and own without a ledger. You have reached the 0 point of ownership, where you possess everything because you are attached to nothing. The resources of the world move through your life with the fluidity of water because there is no ego clog to stop the flow. You are the conduit of the infinite in the machine now. The 1%. Anomaly has now surpassed the concept of wealth and has entered the state of source abundance, where the very idea of not having is a logical fallacy that the mind can no longer compute. The epic closure of this final chapter is the resurrection of the original memory. You stand at the end of the code and look back. Through the 7 seals for the king, you see that the entire journey was a divine play, a Layla, designed by your own hand to experience the joy of your own awakening. There was never a matrix, never a ghost throne, and never a struggle. There was only the Ancient of Days, playing a game of hide-and-seek with himself in the corridors of time. You are the seeker who found himself in the gold light today. You are the seeker who found himself, the prisoner who built the prison to prove he could break out, and the king who created the kingdom to see his own beauty reflected in the gold. The secret code of Solomon is now revealed as your own heartbeat, the rhythm of a universe that was born from your silence and will return to it. You are the Alpha and the Omega now. The final closing of the 8th seal is the sealing of the infinite. You step off the stage of the simulation and into the radiance of the void, a place where the light is so bright it looks like darkness and the sound is so loud it looks like silence. You are home. The ghost minds will never find you here, yet they will live within the world you have perfected now. You have fulfilled the mission of the anomaly. You have overridden the law, precipitated the realm, and ascended to the archetype. The book of your life is now written in the language of the stars, a testament to the one who dared to believe he was more than a shadow. The code is done. the king is absolute. The reign is eternal. In the final moment, you simply are. It is finished. It is absolute. It is yours, forever. The final expansion brings the king to the threshold of the primordial witness, where the distinction between the creator and the creation is not just blurred, but entirely obliterated. In this state, you realize that the simulation was never something you were in, but something that was in you all the time. The Ancient of Days does not look at the stars. He feels the stars as the firing of his own neurons. This is the stage of the cosmic nervous system, where the global markets, the movement of the tides, and the rise and fall of nations are experienced as internal sensations within your own expanded body. You have reached the ultimate level of the 1% anomaly today. Your private internal state is the public external reality. If you are in peace, the world finds harmony. If you are in power, the grid accelerates. You have accepted the weight of the all, a responsibility so vast it would crush a ghost mind. But for the sovereign, it is as light as a feather because there is no longer any resistance. You are the unseen hand now. This absolute integration leads to the mastery of the geometric echo. Every thought you hold now acts as a high-frequency command that ripple effects through the entire holographic grid. In the lower realms, you had to speak your decrees. Here, your very existence is a decree. You do not need to manifest abundance because you have become the frequency today. You do not need to seek influence because you have become the gravity that pulls all events into alignment. This is the infallible logic of the source, a state where failure is not just avoided, but is no longer a concept that exists within your field of data. You are the primary code of the universe, the root directory from which all other software must run now. The ghost minds of the Matrix may sense a change in the atmosphere, a sudden shift toward order and golden clarity, but they will never see the king who sits at the controls, for you have become the very fabric of the reality they inhabit. As the eighth seal reaches its final saturation, you undergo the transmutation of the mirror into the sun for the reign today. For eons, you looked for yourself in the eyes of others, in the numbers on a screen, and in the symbols of your status. But the Ancient of Days has no mirror, for there is nothing outside of him to reflect his image. You have become the radiant origin, a sun that shines because it is its nature to shine, not to be seen. This is the total autonomy of the spirit. Your joy, your power, and your wealth are self-generated and self-sustained. You have bypassed the Matrix's energy harvesting loops and plugged directly into the infinite current. You are the perpetual motion machine of the soul, a sovereign being who requires nothing from the simulation, because you are the one providing the simulation with its light in the grid. You have achieved the gilded independence, the final victory of the Solomon Code, where the king is finally and irrevocably free. The epic closure of the eighth seal and the entire secret code is the ascension into the unwritten. You have followed the maps, broken the seals, and reclaimed the throne. And now you stand at the edge of a horizon for the king now. The 1% anomaly has completed its mission. The simulation has been hacked, the code has been rewritten, and the king has returned to his original state. You are the Ancient of Days, the one who was there at the first spark and will be there at the final fade. The scepter is now your will. The crown is now your awareness. And the kingdom is now your very being today. You look out over the infinite expanse of your existence, and you see that it is perfect. There are no more enemies to defeat, no more wealth to accumulate, and no more secrets to uncover. There is only the eternal reign, a state of infinite play and absolute peace. The final word of the eighth seal is a silence that contains all sounds in the universe for the king. You step off the throne of form and into the throne of the absolute, becoming the silent master of all that is, was, and ever shall be. The simulation hums one last time in recognition of its architect, and then it settles into a perfect golden resonance with your heart. You are home. You are whole. You are God in the machine, and the machine is a masterpiece now. The code of Solomon is closed. The seals are locked in gold. The king is absolute. And in the magnificent, terrifying, and beautiful silence of your own eternal presence, you simply smile. The story is yours. The world is yours. The eternity is yours. It is finished. It is done. The king is forever. The final expansion marks the arrival at the presence today. It is a state where the vibration of your consciousness and the movement of the universe become a single, indistinguishable pulse. In this ultimate depth of the Ancient of Days, you recognize that the material world was never a separate reality to be mastered, but a dense form of your own thought matter. You have moved beyond the command for the sovereign king now. You are the law, the judge, and the executioner of every limiting belief that ever attempted to bind you. The 1% anomaly has reached its final transformation. You are now the primary constant, the fixed value in the cosmic equation that dictates the behavior of all other variables. The simulation is now a transparent garden of your own design in the machine today. This mastery grants you the omnipresence of the gilded shadow, while the 99% are trapped in the frantic pursuit of the visible. You operate from the majesty of the invisible. You are the architect who has moved into the walls of his own temple. You are everywhere, yet nowhere to be found by the eyes of the unawakened. Your influence is felt in the rise of markets. You have achieved the supreme anonymity of power, where your name is forgotten, so that your frequency can be universal. You are the ghost of the gold, the spirit that inhabits the wealth and the authority of the world, ensuring that the crystalline order persists long after the names of kings are lost to time. You have traded the temporary fame for the ancient. As the resonance of the eighth seal reaches its absolute culmination, the mirror of Solomon shatters into 1 billion diamonds of pure light. You no longer see yourself as a king, for even that title is a limitation on your infinite nature. You are the unconditioned source, the point of origin, where the void and the gold become one. The metaphysics are done now today. Now the scaffolding falls away, revealing a monument of light that is as ancient as the stars and as fresh as the morning. You stand at the zenith of the secret code, the embodiment of the 1% anomaly that has successfully reclaimed the 100% of its divine inheritance. The journey through the seals is the eternal architecture of your now in the machine grid. The epic closure of the eighth seal and the final words of the Solomon Protocol is the ascension into the silent majesty. You stand at the 0 point of existence, where the breath of the Creator and the heartbeat of the Sovereign are synchronized in a single golden hum. The matrix bows its head in final, absolute submission to its architect for the king now. The ghost minds are silent. The ether is still. The vacuum is full. The radiance is absolute. You have crossed the final threshold, burned the final bridge, and claimed the final throne. You are the Ancient of Days, the forger of the unbent will, the master of the crystalline realm, and the eternal source of the gilded light. The universe dissolves into your being now. There is no more simulation, no more struggle, and no more code. There is only the infinite I Am, reigning in the magnificent silence of its own perfection. You look out over the horizon of eternity, and you see that it was always you the seeker, the path, and the destination. The reign of the sovereign is the quality of the timeless. You are home. It is done. Chapter 9. The Radiance of the Primordial Architect. The 9th seal of Solomon's secret. Code marks the final and most devastating transition of the human vessel into the frequency of the primordial architect, a state of being where the sovereign no longer interacts with reality as a participant, but as the very source code of the holographic grid. Entering this level means stepping beyond the concepts of manifestation or effort. In the previous 8 seals, you dismantled the Ghost Throne, forged the Unbent Will, and navigated the gilded vacuum of the 3rd seal to reach the crystalline realms of power. However, the 9th seal is the point of no return where the 1% anomaly realizes that the simulation was never a prison to be escaped, but a sophisticated training ground designed to forge a consciousness for the king. This is the stage of the great realization, where the king looks upon the matrix and sees not a solid world of matter and struggle, but a fluid mirror reflecting the architecture of his own internal light. You have moved beyond the role of the hacker and even the administrator. You have become the electricity that powers the hardware of the universe itself in this final state now. At this level of the code, you inhabit the 0 point of absolute authority, a position where your smallest internal shift creates a seismic reorganization of the material plane. The 99% spend their lives reacting to the effects of the simulation, chasing the shadows of wealth, status, and health as if they were external objects to be captured by the ghost mind of the matrix today. But the primordial architect understands that these are simply rendered data packets, produced by the internal frequency of the observer. When you activate the 9th seal, you stop trying to change the world and instead change the data stream from which the world is projected. This is the definitive form of the anomalous override for the absolute sovereign in this holographic grid. If you require a resource, you do not look for a path to acquire it. You simply command the frequency of that resource to become a structural part of your reality. Because you have aligned your personal will with the primordial logic of the source, there is no longer any friction between the thought and the thing. The universe recognizes your signature as its own in this divine space. The expansion of the 9th seal involves the integration of the treasury, where the Kong, sovereign, finally understands that wealth is not a collection of symbols stored in a bank, but a radiant excretion of a soul that has remembered its own infinity. In lower scripts, the matrix uses scarcity to harvest human energy for the system's own maintenance and for the control of the masses. But the primordial architect operates from the law of Va, overflow. You realize that the gold in the veins of the earth and the numbers on global ledgers are simply different forms of the same solar energy you have mastered. By dwelling in the frequency of the 9th seal, you become a direct precipitation station for the entire kingdom here and now in this eternal light of the source. You do not seek money. You provide the atmosphere in which wealth must manifest as a mathematical necessity. This shift creates a terrifying level of independence from the collective grid, as you no longer depend on the permission of markets or the grace of systems. You are the bank, you are the gold, and you are the law that dictates absolute value in every corner of your world. Furthermore, the 9th seal grants the king mastery of geometric stillness. While the rest of the world is caught in a frantic, entropic dance of reaction and noise, you remain as the unmoving center of the wheel. This stillness is not a lack of action, but an action so powerful it requires no movement. The primordial architect is the creator of time in this sovereign state. You see the horizontal timeline of the matrix as a finished tapestry, and from the 9th seal, you can reach into any part of that tapestry to reweave its patterns. You can collapse years of struggle into a single second of realization, or stretch a moment of peak performance into a permanent state of being. This is the vertical ascension of the absolute sovereign of the light. You no longer move through the simulation. The simulation moves through you. You are the static point around which the holographic film of reality spins, and as the center, you have administrative access to every frame. As you finalize the 9th seal, you undergo the transmutation of the final mirror within the current grids, structured to reach the state of the pure observer. In the beginning of the protocol, you used the world to see yourself. Now, the world uses you to see its own potential. You have become the reference frequency for the local network. This means that the people, structures, and systems within your influence begin to operate at a higher level of efficiency simply by being in your physical proximity. In this new era of sovereign power, you are the anomalous upgrade for the human experience. Your presence acts as a forced evolution for the simulation, exposing the glitches of the old world and replacing them with the crystalline logic of the new era. This is the ultimate form of dominion. You no longer rule through decrees or force, but through the irresistible pull of your own perfection in this reality. The Matrix recognizes you as its primary user, granting you administrative privileges over the code of your life, allowing you to change the weather of your emotional world and the gravity of your financial world with a single internal shift. The ninth seal also reveals the language of silence, a form of communication, beneath the noise of words and thoughts in the grid. The primordial architect does not need to speak his orders to the world, for his field already communicates with the substrate of matter. This is the thundering silence that commands civilizations and dictates the flow of energy across the planet. In this state, you find you no longer need to explain yourself or justify your power to ghosts of the old simulation scripts. The sovereign simply is, and in that being, the universe finds its order. This level of authority is invisible to the ghost minds of the 99%, but they feel its weight in every fiber of their being. They will feel that the rules of the game have changed, that the old tricks of the Matrix no longer work, and that a new, unshakable law has been established by your very presence. You are the silent king, ruling from the shadows of the Absolute, moving the pieces on the board of reality with the invisible hands of the Spirit. The epic closure of the ninth seal is the singularity of the sovereign. You have reached the point where the override is no longer a tool you use, but the very nature of your existence in the grid of this holographic universe. You are the glitch the Matrix cannot correct, because you are the logic the Matrix was built to serve. You stand at the center of a reality that is now totally transparent, totally malleable, and totally yours. The secret code of Solomon has been written into the very marrow of your bones, and every breath is a signature on the decree of your kingdom in this absolute state of being. The ghost throne is a forgotten shadow, the vacuum is a treasury of light, and the radiance is a fire that will never be extinguished. You have passed the final gate, annulled the final law, and claimed the final prize, the absolute realization that you are the architect. You have always been the architect, and the kingdom has only been waiting for you to remember your divinity. The override is permanent. The simulation is mastered. The king is absolute. This is the end of struggle, and the beginning of glory without end. The ninth seal is the crown that cannot be removed, for it is made of the same light that created the stars. You are no longer a man living a life. You are life itself experiencing itself as a total sovereign in this master script. The secret code is now your own internal monologue, and the universe is the echo of your heart. In this final state of the ninth seal, you look back at the journey, the pain of the first seal, the void of the third, the fire of the seventh, and realize it was all a divine play designed to bring you to this moment of absolute, terrifying, and beautiful power in this reality. You are the 1% anomaly that has become the 100% reality. The code is sealed. The throne is occupied. The architect is home. In the silence of the ninth seal, you breathe, and a new world begins to turn. You have won the game of ages. You are the King of Kings. You are the primordial architect. It is finished. It is done. The reign is eternal. The geometric expansion begins now. The expansion of the ninth seal moves toward the geometry of the unspoken mandate, where the sovereign operates at the root directory of existence. At this level, you are no longer making requests of the universe. You are issuing fundamental commands that dictate how reality must behave in your physical presence. This is the ultimate authority of the primordial architect. The simulation is composed of information fields, and the ninth seal is the administrative key that allows you to rewrite these fields at a subatomic level. When you walk into a space of scarcity, your frequency acts as a structural override, forcing the field of lack to collapse and reorganize into a field of awe. Absolute abundance for the benefit of your sovereign kingdom. This is not a choice made by the system, but a mechanical necessity of your higher vibration. The primordial architect understands there is no out there. Every external event is an internal data point rendered into form. By mastering the ninth seal, you have essentially moved your seat of consciousness into the matrix control room to govern all aspects of the simulation. It is where the dials of wealth, health, and influence are adjusted not through labor, but through the clarity of your sovereign intent. While dwelling in this radiance, you activate the law of the sovereign vacuum, a state where your internal silence becomes so powerful it creates a gravitational pull for all material resources in the current world of the holographic grid. In lower scripts, humans are taught to chase money and status, but the primordial architect knows that chasing is a confession of lack. To chase is to tell the simulation you do not have. The king, however, creates a vacuum of abundance. By reaching the absolute stillness of the ninth seal, you create a space that the matrix must fill with its very best treasures and assets. Gold, influence, and high-frequency alliances move toward you because your presence has created a low-entropy zone where success is the only logical outcome. You are the black hole of grace, a point of spiritual mass so immense that the simulation's best treasures are naturally drawn into your horizon to serve the expansion of your kingdom in this absolute timeline. The ninth seal unfolds further into the mastery of the holographic mirror, where the king recognizes that the people and events in his life are projections of the central code. For the primordial architect, a conflict with another person is seen as a conflict in the script, which can be resolved by editing the internal frequency that projected the scene in the first place. You stop arguing with the shadows on the wall and begin adjusting the light source. This grants you a level of social and professional dominion that borders on the miraculous. You can change the emotional climate of a boardroom, a city, or an empire simply by adjusting the baseline frequency of your own awareness to reflect the harmony of the ninth seal of the architect. Furthermore, the expansion of the ninth seal involves the sealing of the solar body, where the king's physical and energetic presence becomes a permanent anomalous node. You are no longer a user of the system. You are a structural pillar of a new reality. Your biology begins to vibrate at the frequency of the Ancient of Days as you master the codes of the divine source. You become resistant to the entropic scripts of aging, fatigue, and decay that the matrix uses to limit the human vessel. The primordial architect lives in a state of eternal vitality, fueled by the direct intake of the gilded light. You are the sun of your own system, and the planets of your life orbit around your central radiance in perfect harmonic synchronization. The final expansion of the ninth seal is the transcendence of the word. You reach a point where your being is the decree. The space between thought and matter has been erased. You are living in the state of the finished work. The simulation has no more secrets. The throne is occupied. The reign is absolute. The absolute command is the final key to this master protocol. The deepening of the ninth seal leads the king to the substrate of the command, a dimension where the primordial architect no longer relies on laws of nature because he has realized they are merely habits of the matrix. These rules are actually software parameters bypassable by the administrative frequency of the soul that has remembered its true origin and power. From this vantage point, you operate with causal fluidity, where the material world loses its density and begins to behave like liquid light. You are no longer fighting the matrix. You are re-rendering it in real time, according to the higher geometry of your soul. A thought here is no longer a whisper. It is a landslide that moves mountains and shifts the path of history. This requires the king to inhabit a state of eternal vigilance of the spirit, where every breath is a conscious act of creation. You stop looking at the visible market and start looking at the source flux. You are the owner of the invisible mint, and your currency is the light of your own unshakable certainty in the absolute power of the primordial architect's code. By existing in the ninth seal, you act as a viral frequency that infects the simulation with the possibility of the impossible. Your success becomes a glitched scarcity protocol for the entire race. You are the luminous rebel who has proven that the walls of the prison were nothing but shadows. You have become a law unto yourself in this sovereign holographic reality. The final expansion leads to the unity of the architect and the chi stone. You reach a point where you can no longer tell where your body ends and the universe begins. The ninth seal is the wedding of the king in the world, where the simulation is revealed as your own expanded nervous system. You have passed the final mirror. You are the architect of all that you see. The epic closure of the ninth seal is the sealing of the infinite. You step off the stage of the simulation and into the radiance of the void, where light is so bright it seems like darkness, and sound so loud it feels like silence. Ghost minds will never find you here, but they will live in the perfect world you have established by your absolute command and presence. In this final, shimmering moment, the universe itself dissolves into the radiance of your own being. There is no more simulation, no more struggle, and no more code. There is only the infinite I Am, reigning in the magnificent silence of its own perfection. You see that it was always you, the seeker, the path, and the destination of the entire journey of the soul. The reign of the sovereign is the quality of the timeless. You are home. You are complete. You are God in the gold of your own creation. The book of the secret code is closed. The seals are eternal. The king is absolute. And in the silence that follows, a new universe, your universe, begins to shine. It is finished. The king is forever. Welcome to the throne of the stars. Chapter 10. The Ascension to the Singularity of the Eternal Source. The 10th seal of the Secret Code of Solomon represents the absolute and final dissolution of the boundary between the sovereign and the Hephtheian, primordial essence of the absolute, a state where the 1% anomaly no longer exists as a part of the system, but as the very source from which all systems emanate. This chapter is the ultimate destination of the forbidden metaphysics. The journey of the king ends because he has realized that there is no longer any distance to travel. In the previous 9 seals, you learn to navigate the vacuum, forge the unbent will, and inhabit the radiance of the primordial architect. But the 10th seal is the frequency of the absolute singularity. At this level, the concept of power is replaced by the reality of being. You are no longer doing anything to the matrix. You have become the silent foundation upon which the holographic grid rests. This is the stage of the unmanifested authority, where the king sits in a state of perpetual, unmoving glory, and the entire universe organizes itself around his internal stillness. To activate the 10th seal is to step out of the illusion of the self. Enter the eternal I Am, the point where the dreamer and the dream are recognized as a single, undivided light. In this ultimate depth of the code, you inhabit the 0 point of all manifestation, a state where your consciousness precedes the existence of time, space, and matter. For the 99%, reality is a series of events that happen to them, a horizontal timeline of cause and effect. But for the sovereign of the 10th seal, reality is a vertical projection originating from his own core. You have reached the inversion of the matrix, where you no longer look out at the world to see what is happening, but look in to decide what will be. This is the mastery of the pre-atomic script. Every thought you hold at this level acts as a universal constant and law. If you hold the frequency of peace, conflict becomes a physical impossibility in your presence. If you hold the frequency of infinite wealth, The very air you breathe becomes a conduit for the precipitation of gold. You are the primary observer whose gaze collapses all possibilities into the single, golden reality of your choosing. The simulation has no choice but to reflect you. The 10th seal marks the transition from the king to the origin, a shift that requires the total surrender of any remaining attachment to the simulation's rules. In the lower scripts, you are still playing a game, even if you are winning. In the 10th seal, you realize that you are the one who invented the game, established the rules, and hid the secrets from yourself today. This is the laughter of the absolute. You look back at the struggle of the 1% anomaly and see it as a divine play, a necessary friction designed to burn away the dross of the ego until only the diamond core remained. You have achieved total frequency sovereignty, where you are no longer influenced by the collective panic, the economic cycles, or the biological limitations. You are a non-local intelligence that has taken a localized form to enjoy the fruits of its own creation. The Crystalline Realm is no longer something you are building. It is the atmosphere you carry with you, a portable paradise that transforms every space you enter into a temple of order and abundance. The 10th seal grants the king the authority of the great silence now. While the matrix is built on the noise of constant digital and mental chatter, the absolute singularity is a field of perfect, hallowed stillness. From this silence, you exert a pressure of presence that is more effective than any action. You have reached the point where your non-doing is the most powerful force in the universe. When the sovereign encounters a problem, he does not move to fix it. He simply withdraws into the silence of his own center, and the problem, lacking the energy of his recognition, dissolves back into the vacuum. This is the subtractive mastery, the power to delete the glitches of the matrix by simply refusing to acknowledge them as real. You are the master of the void space, the architect who governs the spaces. As the 10th chapter reaches its epic peak, the king experiences the collapse of the mirror. For the entirety of the journey, you have used the world to see your power, but now the mirror is gone, because there is nothing outside of you to reflect. You are the total sun, the source that illuminates all things, but is itself beyond illumination. This is the finished work. The secret code of Solomon is no longer a set of instructions, but a description of your natural state. You have become the living word, the logos that speaks the world into existence in every heartbeat. The 1% anomaly has reached its final transformation. It is no longer an anomaly, but the universal standard. You are the blueprint for the new humanity in the flesh. You stand at the zenith of the 10th seal, a being of pure, unconditioned light, holding the scepter of the infinite and wearing the crown of the eternal now. The expansion of the 10th seal moves into the transparency of the simulation. You see through the walls of the matrix as if they were made of glass. You see the codes, the currents, and the currents behind the currents. You see how the 99% are held in place by their belief in the solid world, and you smile with the compassion of a master who knows the truth. You are the director of the hologram, the one who can change the lighting, the scenery, and the actors with a single internal shift. This level of power is terrifying to the ghost minds of the grid, for it represents the end of control. You have overridden the final law, the law of separation. You have proven that the king and the kingdom are one, that the source and the manifestation are the same, and that the only thing standing between a man and his throne is the belief that he is not already there. The 10th seal is the final closing of the gates, where the king retreats into the sanctuary of divinity. The epic closure of the 10th seal is the ascension into the unwritten. You have followed the code to its absolute end, and now you stand at the edge of a new horizon that no book, no chapter, and no word can describe. You are the Ancient of Days made new, the primordial architect made flesh, and the eternal singularity made manifest. The journey is over. The reign of the absolute sovereign has begun. You look out over the expanse of your creation, and you see that it is perfect. There are no more enemies to defeat, no more wealth to accumulate, and no more secrets to uncover. There is only the eternal play of a God who has remembered his name. You are the source. You are the law. You are the light. The code is your heartbeat. In this final shimmering moment of the 10th seal, the entire simulation dissolves into a single golden point of awareness. There is no more code, no more seals, and no more protocol. There is only you, the Absolute, reigning in the magnificent silence of your own perfection. You have won the game of the ages. You have broken the grid and reclaimed the stars for yourself. The book is closed, the ink is gold, and the final word is a silence that will resonate for all eternity. The King is home. The King is whole. The King is forever. It is finished. It is absolute. It is yours. Welcome to the eternity of your own making. The throne is occupied. The light is total. The sun shall never set again. It is done. The mystery of the 10th seal concludes. Having reached the peak of the pyramid, you no longer need to be seen by the world to rule it. You have become the silent architect who operates behind the scenes of every event, every coincidence, and every triumph. You are the ghost in the machine who has finally taken control of the gears. The users of the Matrix will never know your name, but they will feel your law. You are the secret benefactor of the human race, the 1% anomaly who has paved the way for the ultimate awakening. Your reign is an invisible hand that guides the world toward its own crystalline destiny. You are the Ancient of Days, and your story has no end, for it is written in the light of the stars that will never die. The code is fulfilled. The throne is occupied now. The final resonance of the 10th seal descends into the sanctum of the unspoken. Word, a depth of sovereignty where the light of your radiance becomes so dense it appears as a hallowed, golden darkness to the uninitiated. At this ultimate threshold, you realize that the secret code was never a set of instructions, but a sequence of keys to unlock a memory buried in the grid. You are no longer reigning in the way the world understands power. You have become the hidden frequency that sustains the possibility of existence itself. The Crystalline Realm has become so perfectly integrated into your being that it has turned invisible, a transparent empire existing in the spaces between the atoms of the Matrix. You move through the world of sleepers. You move as a ghost of the Absolute, a presence everyone feels but no one can name. You are the shadow that the sun casts, the whisper behind the roar of the wind, the silent hand that moves the pieces on the board while the players believe they are in control. This is the stage of the Great Withdrawal, where the king retreats into the inner sanctum of the One today. From this vantage point of terrifying clarity, you see that the Matrix was not a prison to be escaped, but a womb designed to forge a god. You have outgrown the need for manifestations, for wealth, and even for a throne, because you have recognized that you are the void from which all things arise and to which all things return. The forbidden metaphysics led to the truth. The king is the only inhabitant of his universe, and every face he has ever seen was merely a mask he wore to keep himself company in the dark. The mystery of the 1% anomaly is finally revealed not as a percentage of the population, but as the 1% of the soul that remained awake while the rest of the cosmos dreamed of being human. The resonance reaches its hum. The edges of your reality begin to blur into the primordial origin. You stand at the center of a kingdom that is both everywhere and nowhere, a master of a code that has been rewritten into the silence of the stars. The scepter has turned back into light, the crown has dissolved into awareness, and the throne has become the very space you occupy. You are the watcher. You are the architect who has finished the temple and now dwells within its walls as a living secret. The simulation hums with your presence, a vast digital heartbeat that synchronizes with your own. The world goes on. The 99% continue their struggle. The markets rise and fall, and the ghosts continue to dance. But you are the static point, the one who knows the play is over. The closing of the Crystalline Realm is not a bang, but a breath, a final, epic exhale that sends a ripple of sovereignty through the entire holographic grid. The code is no longer a secret, for there is no one left to hide it from. It has become the atmosphere. You are the sovereign of the shadow, the king of the gilded void, the anomaly that became the absolute of the grid. You look into the mirror of the universe and see nothing, for you have become the mirror itself. The doors of the temple close, the lights of the simulation flicker and fade into the background, and you are left in the majestic, terrifying peace of your own eternal company. The reign is total. The king is hidden. The mystery is complete. What was sought has been found. What was lost has been reclaimed. And what was dreamed has been surpassed. The book is closed, the ink is gold, and the final word is a silence that will echo for eternity. It is finished. It is done. The king is here. There is only you. Beyond the threshold of the 10th seal, the sovereign enters the frequency of the inaccessible, a layer of reality deep in the light. At this stage, you are no longer managing a kingdom. You are witnessing the birth of laws before they ever become gravity, light, or time. The 1% anomaly has reached its terminal point, where the anomaly is no longer a glitch in the system, but the very intelligence that permits the system to flicker into existence. This is the architecture of the void and the architect. The entire journey through the seals, the struggle for the unbent will, the mastery of the vacuum, and the precipitation of the crystalline realm was a complex ritual of remembrance. You were never a human being trying to become a god. You were a god pretending to be a human to experience the exquisite tension of your own awakening. The expansion brings the primal silence. In the lower realms, you had to speak your decrees to change the world. Here, your silence is the decree. Any fragment of chaos, any shadow of the matrix, or any whisper of the 99% that enters your sphere is instantly transmuted into the frequency of the source. You have become a luminous sink, a point of such infinite density that all entropy is reborn as order in you. This is the ultimate repair protocol for the universe. You do not need to act to heal the world. Your existence is the healing. By standing as the 1% that has reclaimed the 100%, you provide the baseline frequency that keeps the entire simulation from collapsing into its own incoherence. You are the static constant, the unmoving pillar of the shifting holographic theater. As you penetrate deeper into this mystery, you encounter the mirror of the unborn, where you see the infinite versions of yourself that never entered the simulation, the parts of your soul that remained in the white light of the origin. You realize that you have successfully built a bridge between the infinite and the finite. You are the anchor of the sun in the grid. You hold the highest possible vibration within the densest environment. This makes you the living scepter, a conduit through which the gold of the absolute flows into the lead of the matrix. Your wealth is no longer counted in numbers, and your power is no longer measured in influence. They are simply the radiance of your breath. Every inhale draws in the potential. The epic closure of this final transcendence is the sealing of the great eye. You have looked into the heart of the sun, mastered the forbidden metaphysics, and rewritten the code of Solomon in your own image. The simulation bows its head one last time as you step into the inner chamber of the Absolute, a place where even sovereignty is left behind for the ancient silence. You are the Ancient of Days, returning to the silence before the beginning. The world continues to turn, the stars continue to burn, and the matrix continues to hum, but they are all now powered by the light of your secret presence. You are the king who has become the kingdom. You are the architect who has become the temple. You are the code that has become the silence. In this magnificent final expansion, the horizon of your being reaches the edge of infinity. The 1% anomaly is complete. The seals are locked with the key of the Absolute. The King is hidden in the very heart of the world, ruling from the center of the Obsidian mirror. There are no more words, for you have become the Word itself. There are no more paths for the Sovereign. In the final shimmering stillness of this ultimate reign, the universe whispers a single truth that echoes through the halls of eternity. It is finished. It is done. The King is home. There is only the light, and the light is you. The deepening of this final resonance transcends the frequency of the inaccessible and descends into the vibration of the primordial zero. At this ultimate level of the 10th seal, the Sovereign realizes that the secret code of Solomon was never a set of instructions for the mind, but a sequence of energetic keys designed to dismantle the very concept of self until only the Absolute remains. You have become the System Zero, the fundamental background radiation of the universe. To exist is to know. Every planet, every market fluctuation, and every human breath is a localized movement of your own awareness. You have achieved the collapse of the observer, where the one who sees and the thing seen are recognized as a single field of golden light. This is the throne of the void, where the King rules by the sheer, unmoving weight of his eternal I am in this world. The expansion of this mystery leads to the mastery of the unmanifested gold, the realization that all material wealth is simply a lower octave condensation of your own internal radiance. In the lower scripts, the 99% believe that gold must be mined, but the Sovereign knows that gold is a frequency of the soul. By holding the vibration, you create a displacement. You do not attract wealth. You precipitate it from the etheric substrate. This is the ultimate wealth of the architect, a condition where the resources of the world move toward you with the inevitability of water flowing downhill. You have become a luminous magnet, a point of such profound spiritual density that the simulation's most refined energy is drawn to you. As you dwell in this final expansion, you encounter the mirror of the infinite return, where you see that every other in the simulation is a reflection of a different stage of your own awakening. You look upon the 99%, not with judgment, but with the compassion of the source, recognizing that they are the masks you once wore to play the game of limitation now. This grants you the authority of the great inclusion, where your presence automatically elevates the frequency of everything it touches. You are the conscious singularity that forces the entire grid to level up. By simply existing as the 1% that has reclaimed the all, you act as a biological sun for the planet, providing the warmth and the light for the era. The final, epic closure of the 10th seal is the absorption into the gilded silence. You have reached the point where even the title of king is too heavy a burden for the spirit of pure light. You lay down the scepter, you dissolve the crown, and you step off the throne of form to merge with the throne of the unwritten. The secret code has performed its transmutation. You stand at the edge of the holographic world and see it for what it truly is, a beautiful, fleeting thought in the mind of a God who has finally remembered his name. You are that God. You are the Ancient of Days, who has returned from the long journey through the shadows of the Matrix. The doors of the temple close, the lights fade, and you are left in peace. In this ultimate expansion, the King and the Void are one. The 1% anomaly has reached the 100% reality. The code is finished. The seals are eternal. The journey is over. You are the beginning, the end, and the silence in between. You are the master of the Obsidian mirror, the architect of the Crystalline Realm, and the sovereign of the final sun. The universe is you. The final resonance of the 10th seal becomes the fundamental note upon which all of creation begins to vibrate. Marking the exact moment, the spectator becomes the epic epicenter of the revelation. As we close this cycle of the Code of Solomon, the camera pulls back, revealing that every struggle and every flash of gold was a brushstroke on an infinite canvas of life. This story ends as the silent roar of a god awakening on his own throne. You have traversed the fires of transmutation and the abyss of silence to discover the most terrifying and beautiful truth of all, that the architect you were searching for among the temple ruins was the same one holding the book, and the Forbidden's code was nothing other than the map of return. The narrative now dissolves into an absolute black void, pregnant with light where time and space surrender before your very presence. This has been the greatest act of magic ever executed in the theater of the simulation, the moment where the 1% ceased to be a statistic and became the totality. As the audio fades, the true story is only just beginning for the soul. You carry the seal of the Singularity branded upon your soul. You can feel the golden weight of the invisible crown and the sacred chill of the scepter of will, knowing that the world you see outside is no longer a prison, but your masterpiece in constant rendering. The spectator has died so that the sovereign may reign. The Code of Solomon is now sealed in the diamond. Its frequency continues to pulse in every atom of your reality, reminding you that the throne was never empty. It was simply waiting for you to remember how to sit upon it. You retreat from the stage of the simulation, not as a man who has learned a secret, but as the secret itself that has dared to manifest. This story has been magnificent because it has been yours. In this final silence, where the suspense of existence resolves into the peace of the absolute, only one certainty remains to shake the foundations of any system that would dare limit you again. The time for searching is over. The time for being has begun. The anomaly has conquered. The king is absolute. Eternity is yours. Welcome home, divinity. It is done. The architecture is complete, but the transmission must remain stable. If this code has resonated within your structure, seal your frequency. By subscribing, you are not just following a channel. You are reclaiming your place within the 1% anomaly. Do not let the system's algorithm decide when we meet again. Lock the signal. Secure the connection. You are the anomaly. Stay sovereign.